Badlands, running to Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Mr. Vice President, I'm going off script again, I know, but I just want to personally thank you. We've been through some stuff. We've gone through some of the most complex military operations this country's ever conducted, and your steady hand and your leadership during those was a great source of strength for me. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your character. Thank you for your selfless service. Thank you for commitment. Thank you for being a mentor to me, Mr. Vice President.
It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. Did I get that one right? Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
This is a president of the United States who is a danger to the republic.
America first.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans.
The great Trump recovery.
America will never be a socialist country. I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, Russian, Russia, Russian, 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 the Russians, Russian,
Russia, Russia, Russia.
And I will never, ever let you down.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this.
The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. What they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Together, we will make America strong again. You know what it's about? Fraud, fake ballots. We will make America wealthy again. They are trying to steal the election.
Now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of special operations forces.
We will make America proud again. And watch, please, those mail-in ballots. We will make America safe again. And in millions and millions of ballots, their vote is under what they thought they needed. They're dumping more ballots in there, okay? And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Devolution Power Hour. Mr. Burning Bright, how are you doing, sir?
A little sniffly, and I just recently got over the man flu, so dire straits.
What's going on now?
Just some nasal congestion, probably allergies, could be the bubonic plague, something in between those two, I would assume.
Have you tried Midol?
I don't even know what that is, so no.
It's for period cramps, you bitch.
That's what cranberry juice is for.
Cranberry juice is not for period cramps. It's for.
Yeah, it is. You haven't seen The Departed, man?
It's for bladder infections.
It's for period stuff too.
What kind of period stuff?
Great way to.
Just because it's red. Just because it's red doesn't mean it's for period
you gotta
stuff.
watch The Departed, the early scene.
I've seen The Departed.
Leonardo DiCaprio orders a cranberry juice at the bar, and the guy goes, "What is it, your effing period?" And then DiCaprio beats him with a glass, and that's how he first gets in to Costello's gang.
He probably beat him with a glass because it's absurd to think that cranberry juice would help the period.
Maybe that's
probably why.
That's what was going on. That made him super mad.
Huh.
Otherwise, I will persist.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we're all praying for your full recovery, man.
Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Lots to talk about tonight. Lots going on. Lots of weird stuff and some interesting narratives, I would say. Well, one interesting narrative is kind of like coming to what feels like a resolution, and that's the DOGE narrative. I want to talk about that a little bit. We'll get into what else? Oh, yeah, the FBI stuff. Kash Patel now did another sit-down interview, this time with Brett Baer. I did listen to the whole thing earlier while I had to replace a freaking sprinkler head. I mowed it off, and I had to fix it, and they need to use AI to enhance sprinkler systems, I feel like.
See, tell that to Ash.
Installation.
In the future, no sprinkler heads will be damaged when our AI overlords are mowing and our AI sprinklers are communicating with our AI lawnmowers to make sure nothing like that ever happens again in the golden age.
Would you ever get one of those Tesla robots or a robot in general?
Probably. I mean, I would have said no, like as recently as a year ago, but if Elon is coordinating with Trump and is part of these plans that we talk about, and if these sort of techno-futurists are correct about Optimus, it would be one of those things that you may end up being at like some sort of massive disadvantage if you don't. But we just have to see how it all shakes out.
I don't know if I could ever trust it.
Yeah.
After iRobot, I just can't do it. But I would think it would be nice to have like a robot to mow my lawn. But I guess that's what my kids are for too when they get old enough, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Well, those are like the Tesla organic Tesla bots, right? You just make them.
Yeah.
Like I made one recently. Mrs. Bright helped, and you just put a few more of those on the production line, and takes him super long to get operational. I'm learning. Like he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do any chores. I was out there raking today, and he's just sitting there in his mother's
all
arms.
over himself.
Yeah.
Is he like sitting up on his own yet?
Yeah. I mean, no. I mean, not just like on the couch.
Like
you can like prop him up with pillows and stuff like that.
Okay, but he can't like sit there.
No.
Like if you sit him down, he'll fall over.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's pretty little.
I can't remember how old he is.
Almost 5 months.
Anyway, I got distracted with my show topics. So we're going to talk about, what did I say, DOGE and the FBI stuff.
Putin kayfabe.
Yep, Putin stuff.
World War III happens on Monday, I think, depending on which side of it you're on.
We don't know which Monday, though.
Yeah.
A lot of Mondays.
Israel, part of the same topic, maybe.
Yep. The Bitcoin conference going on right now, and some what feels like pretty big signal coming out of just the Bitcoin and monetary realm generally.
Yeah.
The big beautiful bill. Talk about that a little bit. Yeah, and we'll just see what else happens.
Yeah.
See what comes
Let's
up.
do it.
Well, before we get into any of that, let's get a quick word from the sponsors of today's show. And we got a new one that I'm pretty excited about. Let me get this pulled up here. Here we go. Bear bars. Have we been duped? We're all trying to get healthier, grabbing protein bars that look healthy, but do you actually know what's in those bars? It's all junk. One comparison found a fast food burger was healthier than a protein bar. That's why I'm all about this new Bear bar. It's what you thought you were getting in a protein bar. Real food, minimal ingredients, no mystery additives. The Bear bar is literally beef protein, tallow, honey, and salt. That's it. I even have one. I could show you. It does actually say that on there. I was reading it, and they're tasty too, guys. They asked me to eat one on air. I just feel. Remember that one time when you were eating during, I think it was a Liberty Den or something, and I like yelled at you.
Chips, yeah.
Yeah, you were sitting there like eating chips.
I was just seeing if you were.
Show.
I was just opping you to see where the line was.
And it was there. That's why I feel like a hypocrite if I would eat on screen after yelling at you one time for doing it. But I will say I've tried them and they're delicious. This is, I think I only have like 4 left and they come in a box of like 10 or 12.
Mrs. Bright is into espresso, so she'll probably like that flavor.
You should get some. More reason to love the Bear Bar. 20 grams of clean grass-fed beef protein. And no, it doesn't taste like beef. I can vouch for that. Light, fluffy texture, not a gut bomb like other protein bars. Naturally sweet, easy on your stomach, and most importantly, it tastes amazing. Bear Bar got it right. A high-quality protein bar without the junk. You got to try it. And I can even get you a 15% discount and free shipping. Use code DPH at getbearbars.com. That's getbearbars.com. Promo code DPH. Awesome. We do have another sponsor. I'll get to them a little later, so don't let me forget. I kind of want to start with, let's start with the Elon Musk thing.
Yeah.
If you're good with that. So Elon Musk, he posted this on Twitter, first of all. This was just like 2 hours ago. As my scheduled time as a special government employee comes to an end, I would like to thank President real Donald Trump for the opportunity to reduce wasteful spending. The DOGE mission will only strengthen over time as it has become a way of life throughout the government. And then there is some clips of him speaking. I'll play this one. This was on CBS Sunday Morning.
So, I was like disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the DOGE team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, like, everything he's done on DOGE gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both.
Might have been a little out of place, but there's this huge push from Congress right now. All of a sudden, like urgency, like, oh, we need to pass a DOGE cut bill, and the White House is supposedly sending over some cuts that they want codified. It's only $9 billion worth of cuts, and then we have what the Department of Government Efficiency actually has saved so far, according to their website. $175 billion. And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer because I'm very positive about where we're going, even though it's not necessarily on my timeline. But I got to say, going into this term and all the hype and everything surrounding DOGE, I was expecting a way bigger number than $175 billion. And now Elon Musk is leaving. I know the mission of DOGE is going to continue in some form, but it seems like a huge narrative shift now with him kind of leaving the public game board, the government game board. And it's just kind of like his appearance here. It fell flat. It feels like we didn't accomplish what we were told was going to be accomplished. And that's just my opinion on it. I would love to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of angles to this one, and certainly don't pretend to know for sure what Trump and Musk are planning with this narrative or what their intention is. But I am confident that they are coordinating on their messaging. Some people disagree with that. The reason I say that, actually, before the Elon stuff broke, when was this? A few days ago, I guess. Trump was tweeting about growth and everything. He's obviously been talking a lot about the big beautiful bill and saying Congress needs to do the right thing and all that, the typical like Trump trumpet type of thing. But he had a truth post a few days ago where he said, our nation is staging one of the greatest and fastest comebacks in history. In just 4 short months, we're respected again, respected like never before, and just wait, with many trillions of dollars in investment in plants and factories. Until you see the numbers on growth, he puts growth in all caps, this is indeed the golden age of America. I thought that was notable because it was coming. I got the timeline mixed up. That was coming on the heels of a lot of the FUD about Elon leaving Doge. So today, Elon kind of like put these statements out there, but this actually started a few days ago. I can share when I first saw it. I'll share my screen here. This guy Sawyer Merritt is like a Tesla analyst. I actually watched some of his stuff on YouTube. So he's just been analyzing the company for a long time. And I think reading this is worthwhile because Elon responded to this on May 23rd and said, yeah, with a sigh in parentheses. So this is the Elon argument. I think Elon is realizing that despite promises made by the new admin and a Republican-controlled Congress and all the campaign platforms they ran on, the current incentive structures and entrenched special interests in government make it nearly impossible to enact any meaningful long-term change to address many big issues we face. While Doge will continue to do its thing and do great work, as Elon has said, it seems he's mainly now focused on using his companies to take matters into his own hands and drive us toward a future of sustainable abundance. Now, the reason I thought that was I marked that down and saved that because Elon responded to it. And then Trump, a couple days later, is talking about growth in all caps. And Trump was responding to a lot of the negativity that, we talk about as well, of like, hey, a lot of the stuff you're saying is going to happen is not happening, and whether it's Congress's fault or this fault, and Doge is going to change the world, and now we knew it wasn't going to work the whole time. Like, there's been a lot of rugs back and forth. I think we can all agree on that.
I would argue it's been only rugs.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I thought that this was a bit of a coordinated pivot, and I think probably pre-planned. We've been talking about since Doge launched that this was a narrative deployment mainly with Elon's involvement, and that he'd be moving on. Of course, we had different framing, thinking like, yeah, they're going to slash all this stuff. But I thought the fact that they both pivoted to growth was interesting. It could just be a narrative, but if you do go down those rabbit holes of like the super techno-optimist rabbit holes that Elon really brought into the public zeitgeist, those are like the golden age narratives, and then Trump has branded his whole transition the golden age. And it does make me wonder if part of what we're looking at here on multiple levels is Trump coming in and like showing everybody how broken the governmental system is. And that like even when you get the quote unquote smartest guy in the world and Trump's the president and he's got Congress and he's got the Senate, he's got the Supreme Court, like even he can't cut more than a tiny fraction of a % of government waste. Maybe it'll turn around, but the growth pivot is making me wonder if that's part of the point. Is he's like, this is not the way we're going to be able to do this, and showing people that it's not the way. But I don't know, maybe it's another rug.
Yeah, but see, even that, like, I don't necessarily think we've seen that much exposure on how bad the waste and fraud is. Like,
I think we have.
I've been trying to reflect on the first 4 months, and like honestly, truthfully, what has been accomplished these first 4 months, other than like people are genuinely more excited about the prospects of the future because of Trump being in office. But like in anything tangible, I was just looking for anything tangible, and I couldn't think of anything. And even the exposure stuff, like with Doge, there's a ton of hype about it, and I would say the USAID thing was probably the most impactful one that we got.
Yeah,
like that story coming from Doge. But otherwise, the USAID is still active. They're keeping 1,000 contracts, and it's just going to the State Department. And so even that being exposed, it didn't fully root out the problem. And so like this narrative deployment of Elon Musk coming in and him leaving as almost like a dud, like it has me wondering if there was something that they ran into that led to a change of plans, like they had to pivot, like you said. And is it really because they can't get over the government hump? Like the bureaucracy is that entrenched and that bad that they can't get over it? And if that's the case, how long are they going to willingly choose to participate in this specific battle space? Because they don't, I feel like they don't need to do it this way.
In terms of like they could brute force some things.
Yeah. So it comes down to there's two ways I look at what's potentially going on, right? And it's either full control of everything or some degree short of that. Okay. And I've always been in the camp of I don't think they have full control of everything. I think they have some scale of control. With that being said, that means the enemy does have a say in whatnot, and Trump is choosing to participate within the constitutional framework that was presented to him, the media landscape presented to him, even though I think he dictates more of it now. In a lot of ways, he's just participating on their playing field. I don't know what it means or what this would look like, but I do believe whenever he wants to, he can choose to participate on a different battlefield, one that is his home field. And I'm just wondering, how long is he going to choose to participate in these battle spaces instead of just pulling the rug on it and switching to one that he fully controls to get over some of these humps? Because the way it's presented right now, it's like, okay, we are being controlled by the courts, the judicial branch that is stonewalling everything he's doing. We have the congressional
the tariff thing tonight.
You have the congressional situation where we can't get anything meaningful done. And anytime we're going to pass anything, it has to be either some sort of reconciliation process. Like we have to find ways to pass things to get by the 60 vote threshold that we need in the Senate. And there's very few things that we can actually do that's going to get bipartisan support that's going to do that. And so we're looking at a pretty much a stonewall of any meaningful legislation. And then we look at not fixing the election system. And the only way to overcome the threshold in the Senate is to get people into the Senate that will vote for America First stuff. But we're not going to get that unless we fix the election system. And so how long are we going to keep playing on this route and before we switch fields? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually think that's well said. And this is, I think, a funny example of where sometimes we are trying to get to a very similar endpoint, but we're approaching it from like opposite directions. Because that's actually similar. I know it's not exactly what you're saying, but it's similar to what I meant when I said that there's a narrative pivot here going on. I totally agree with you that like I don't assume full control, but when I say control, I believe the narrative is fully controlled. I believe that Trump and Elon are coordinating on their messaging. Like I find it hard to believe that when they went in there, they didn't know what they were going to run into. Now, we might have been wrong about what they were going to do once they ran into those things, right? But I think they knew what they were going to do and more what they could do. I like your framing of the battle space because that's what I was thinking of when it came to the pivot of saying, if you think of the battle space as a story, and really what's the story from these guys? It's a pitch to the American people. The pitch coming in as what Elon said, Elon was talking about DOGE and Trump was like, we're going to cut all this fraud and abuse. That's the battle space of like, this is what our approach is going to be. And now they're pivoting sharply on that. And that's why I'm wondering if the pivot is itself sort of what you're referencing, that they're like, we tried to do it the way that you're supposedly supposed to do it on the current battle space and in the current system, and it's not going to work that way. So we're going to go in a different direction, which is like decentralization, technology acceleration. And I find it interesting, I've been really interested in that stuff for months, like Bitcoin, Tesla, all that. I just find it interesting that like if you're in that narrative right now, the acceleration in technology, you're like on cloud 9 about everything the Trump admin is doing, like in terms of executive orders and stockpiles and nuclear deals that we've been talking, nuclear executive orders, right? Data centers, all this crap. But if you're on like the DOGE side of the ledger, you've been having a horrible year and the narrative has sucked and been rugs the whole time. And I'm wondering if this is Trump and Elon pivoting publicly to the acceleration narrative and away from the we're going to fix the broken system narrative.
Yeah. So when I think of battle spaces, I think of them as more of like structural frameworks. Like the battle space in terms of our government is the Constitution and the laws and everything. And the way we see government play out on TV every day, that's the current battle space. A switching of that battle space would be going back to more of a situation that the founders intended. The media is its own structural, but like the way Trump communicates to the media using the old mainstream media, like switching that structure would be switching to all podcasters, you know what I mean? Or all people that won't lie. Like that's a completely different system, which he could do at any point. And so when I see him switching stories within the same framework, because that's what I'm seeing with this, like the technology push, the Bitcoin stuff, They're staying within the same media framework. They're staying within the same constitutional and government framework. They're just talking about new things now. And I know people in the chat, they say like, stop blackpilling. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm trying to, I believe that Trump is in a position of power, right? Like of control. I don't think he's in full control. I think he could pull the rug on them whenever he wants, but there's a reason he hasn't yet. And it's trying to figure out what that reason is. And if there's a way that we can affect that reason, and then that's what I want to be doing. And right now, I think a lot of that is narrative and like engaging people locally. That's why we focus on the things we focus on. But there has to be a reason where they campaigned and did so much talk about the Department of Government Efficiency leading up to it. Like there was one of the most hyped things you could think of. It was Elon Musk getting involved in politics. He's going to be a special government employee. Media was freaking out. Like it was one of the most hyped governmental things since Trump himself. And this is all we got from it. It's like leaving on a, what's the term in music when it's like going down? Is that decrescendo?
I don't know.
I'm not a music guy, but it's something. It's whatever. Crescendo is getting big. It's the opposite of that. It's like going out on a dud, and that it's just weird to me for how hyped it came in. You know what I mean? $175 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse exposed is nothing compared to what we need to actually right the ship. It's nothing.
Yeah, I totally agree. The point I'm making on the acceleration side of things is that if you agree, or if you go down that rabbit hole, which again might be complete bullshit, and I know like Ash and everybody's going to say it is, maybe it is, but we're talking about, what is it, 30-something trillion dollars in debt, like that's the U.S. debt clock and all this kind of stuff. The idea behind hyperscaling, AI, autonomy, nuclear, and autonomy, I don't know if I said that, is that single companies are going to be valued at $30 trillion. And that's one of those, that is the bull case, like crazy golden age fever dream on one side of the ledger that Elon Musk talks about super openly. Like he thinks Tesla right now, I think, is at a $1 trillion valuation, maybe up to 2, something like that. And he's like, this is going to be a rounding error within 20 years of what this company is worth, and saying that once the age of autonomy begins and companies are printing robots that replace all current human labor, and cue like people freaking out about that, I'm just saying this is his vision, then one potential way to look at it is that they are saying we're going to accelerate so fast technologically that we are rendering a corrupt governmental system completely inert and irrelevant. That's like that crazy scenario. I think it's probably less likely. And, a lot of what we talk about is sort of founded on the idea of thinking that there are plans. I think we should use that terminology rather than like control, because I agree with you that it's not full control, all that. But we do believe firmly that Trump has a plan. And I guess where I'm coming from is it is very difficult for me to believe that the 8 years of the Trump story and what we believe was devolution and continuity of government, you believe in the Q drops and whatever else, right? This whole plan. And then they're like, you know what we didn't account for? The government. Like, that's the stuff that I have a really hard time getting on board with everything we know about Trump. And I know you're saying something similar. So I totally agree that it's been a dud, but I think that there's a method to what Trump is doing from a narrative level. We just don't know what that is. Is he saying, I need the public mandate not to cut government fraud and abuse, but to gut the government, like to reform the government? That could be the more likely rather than like Tesla bots in the skies. It really, gun to my head, what are they doing? Trump across the battle space right now is telling everybody openly on Truth Social, everything I am doing, they are trying to block. And we've got these unelected judges, as he keeps saying, blocking his whole global tariff plan. And that he's basically trying to cultivate the story for reformation, not just like, hey, we want to cut government waste. He's like, we need to set precedent to make sure that unelected judges can never interfere with the US president again. And as you said, last point, all of this, really, most of it, is predicated on the election systems, which he has talked about, right? Because ultimately, if it turns out that not only is Congress stonewalling the DOGE plan amidst everything else, but they're unelected and they're stonewalling it.
Yeah, and that's ultimately where it's at. It's like Trump is up against the stonewalling in his first term too, and it's just more of the same to me. And again, I know people consider this to be dooming or blackpilling, but that's not what this is. I'm very solutions orientated, and I see the solution in my eyes as fixing the election system. And I'm just wondering how long we have to operate within this specific narrative of there's nothing I can do. My hands are tied. I want to pass DOGE cuts, but I can't. 175 billion. Like, we paid almost 400 billion in our interest last year. I'm pretty sure we spent more to Ukraine than we saved with DOGE cuts.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good start, but if it doesn't get codified, what does it matter? And it's not going to get codified.
Right.
And so yeah, it's just it's interesting. It's like the expectations. When Trump first gets in, everybody everywhere is like, just give it time, just give it time, just give it time. And I'm willing to give time. I just like how much time? What's the red line? And it's the same thing with the FBI. I have been excited about Kash Patel going on TV more, and I do have a clip I want to play. If you're ready to transition to that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're laying out. I just think, in terms of the patience thing, to me, if you don't think you're seeing progression, I understand that. And I think people frame progression differently. Like, I obviously look at everything as narrative and think that's the most important thing to lead with. So I get excited when I see a shift in narrative that I didn't expect when it's coming from Trump, because I'm like, ooh, that maybe this is the rug. And then just one more point on it would be, from an actual level, the Reformation, like, to people in the chat saying that I'm talking about like destroying the US Republic, that's not what Reformation or restoration looks like. I'm talking about, was the Republic supposed to be founded on unelected judges blocking the commander-in-chief from doing things that we elected him to do? Obviously not. So, like, can we get that definition narrowed and codified? Speaking of codification, and that one feels like it's the closest to reality, because, the appeal, right when these judges are striking stuff down from Trump, the appeal is on them right away. And when I've been reading like Jonathan Turley and a lot of these legal scholars, they are saying there is no chance in hell Trump is going to lose these appeals when they go to the Supreme Court. So that's an example of, like, he actually literally has to lose these fights early from a judicial perspective, or he can't, literally cannot legally set the precedent to stop this stuff from happening in the future.
But if we're having the discussion where we're going to go back to a different constitutional framework, more like our founders intended, then none of this stuff matters, Well,
that's
like
part
him having to set a precedent for something. If we're going to go back to a previous time in the timeline in terms of the law, then he doesn't have to set precedent legally. Doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And that's like the rug I'm waiting on. Because if you expose election fraud stuff, that exposes the courts too. How many of these judicial appointees or judges were put in place by an illegitimate government?
Right.
Probably most of them, depending how far back you want to go. At least one of them on the Supreme Court, if you look at just what happened after 2020. But they're all over the place. Like, so I understand the exposure stuff, and this is where I know Trump is up to something. I always know Trump is up to something. He's the only one I give the benefit of the doubt to. But him, like, having back-to-back tweets, like going to bed one night saying, "Oh my gosh, the Supreme Court's destroying the country," and then the very next day saying, "Hopefully the Supreme Court will save the country." Like,
right.
Those are contradictory messages, and that part is an op. It's part of the feedback loop that he's throwing out there, which that tells me that there is a role that we play in terms of the feedback, spreading the feedback to more people.
Totally.
But yeah, it's just I have this sense of urgency. While I believe Trump has it under control to a degree where he's not going to let us down, I still have a sense of urgency considering the ramifications and the lack of movement I'm seeing in the one key area, which is election fraud. Like, if I even saw movement there, I'd be like, okay, we can deal with the bullshit. At least the midterms will get some America First candidates in there and get stuff fixed. But I'm not seeing enough movement there yet.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, I actually think these back and forth, we've said this in different ways in other shows, but I genuinely believe that when it comes to, you saying we play a role in this, we as the American people, I genuinely think that these back and forths of like what is going on here, not even from a game theory perspective, but of what does it, if you're just like a normie MAGA voter and you're like, yeah, DOGE, golden age, like we got all three branches, all this kind of shit, right? You're way more pissed than people in this audience, because at least people in this audience do have some of that belief that like, yeah, there's some 5th gen warfare going on here. Vast majority of people don't even know what that means. So I think they are who it's really targeted at, and they want this happening. Like they want those however many tens of millions of real Trump voters to be like, what the fuck? Like, we voted. I was told that this was a mandate election, and we supposedly got the guy in, and he's not able to do anything, even though we, Trump meaning we, supposedly control like the branches of the US government. And I think that that's the point. Now, where's it going is what we have fun speculating on and get annoyed by as well. But I do think that from a narrative level, like the impatience and everything, I think is a feature. I think Trump and them, I don't know if it was Chris or somebody posted in our chat earlier today, great Steve Bannon rant on like the FBI and everything. Now, like Steve Bannon might know why things are being slow rolled, but either way, he's deploying a public narrative of this is not good enough and we need to demand more out of the FBI. And I think both of those things can be true. And I think that's the balance we're trying to strike. We think much more needs to be done and this is not good enough. And we're pretty optimistic that more will be done. We're just trying to figure out what that is.
Yeah, I want to play this clip from Kash Patel. Stormers Arrive posted. I'm going to play it a little faster because it's kind of a long clip, but I think the whole thing is worth listening to. So let's take a listen.
You were on with Maria a few weeks ago, and you said this.
What we can do now is continue to put out the documents and the information that these people withheld from the American public. You're about to see a wave of transparency.
What do you mean?
Just give us about a week or two.
All right, we're almost at 2 weeks. So this is about Crossfire Hurricane. You just talked about that, all that you've been learning. Mm-hmm. Can you give us a little of that wave of transparency?
Absolutely. So just quickly on Crossfire Hurricane, that is a continuing production. We have found material, and I'm the Crossfire Hurricane guy, that I didn't even know existed in FBI holdings.
So there's been held someplace else? Or
that's been stashed away in locations that people thought we wouldn't find it because we wouldn't know to look for it there. And as promised with my congressional partners, I'm working with Congress on constitutional oversight because that's what the American people deserve. And those documentations have been flowing to Congress nonstop on a rolling basis since that interview. But more importantly, people have had questions about January 6th and whether or not there were FBI sources, not agents, sources on the ground during January 6th. And I told you I would get you the definitive answer to that, and we have. And we are in the process, again, of working with our partners to divulge that information, and it is coming. And I will tell you this. The answer to that question will surprise and shock people because of what past FBI leaders have said about it.
Former FBI Director Chris Wray eventually admitted to Congress there were 26 FBI confidential human sources in and around the Capitol January 6th, but not actual agents. Can you say that's true? Are there more than that? What you're learning from that?
I can say that that is definitely a piece of the truth. Why it took a ton of time for and questioning in Congress for the director to get that point is what I'm trying to eliminate from the FBI. If Congress asks you a question under oath, whether or not there were sources in around January 6th at the Capitol, you as the director of the FBI need to know that and not deflect and give a DC answer. You have to be prepared for that. And that's the answer we're giving. That's the answer Chris Wray should have given.
And eventually everybody's going to know the whole picture.
Yeah, because the American people deserve that. And look, no one's more frustrated than me. Remember, I was chief of staff of the Department of Defense on January 6th. We said that we were ready, and the president had previously authorized the National Guard to be there days in advance.
I wonder where Bernie Bright went. But I wanted to make a comment, but I wanted him to respond to it. And I didn't want this to go too far. Oh, there he is.
I heard you.
Are you good?
Yeah. I had to get some Tylenol.
Oh, so you're not good.
I'm on my period.
I'm telling you, man, I bet your wife has some. Okay, so the first part of this, they were talking about the Crossfire Hurricane stuff, and they needed a couple weeks. They said they found documents in a place that they didn't think they would look or something, which I think is kind of a silly story. I feel like this being the Crossfire Hurricane guy, he probably already had the information and the documents that he needed, and that's just how he's saying that they're going to roll it out. Like, oh, we happen to find it in a place in a file cabinet that nobody thought we'd look. Kind of absurd to me. But
yeah.
On that note, on the Crossfire Hurricane stuff, there has been some stuff coming out of Grassley and the Senate and some of these committees like he's talking about. We had them put out this file today from the FBI, and Catherine Herridge posted about it. Chuck Grassley alleges lying to Congress over origins and coordination of Russiagate dossier. The Justice Department failed to prosecute Fusion GPS contractor Nellie Orr for lying to Congress about her role in advancing the FBI and DOJ's Crossfire Hurricane investigation, according to an internal FBI analysis confirming Orr's false congressional testimony. Another reason this is interesting is Ezra Cohen-Watnick actually responded with a piece of this. Yeah. And remember, Ezra Cohen-Watnick was part of the Russiagate stuff. He's the guy who discovered the unmaskings. It was him and I think Mark Elias, and they gave it to Kash Patel and Devin Nunes. But this is what he pointed out. For example, while Nellie was employed by Fusion GPS, she even associated with the supervisor of Reuters FBI Federal Corruption Squad, CR-15. The SSA spent time with the Orrs when he traveled with Nellie and Bruce to a February 2016 conference in the Czech Republic. He and Bruce were two of the four featured speakers. Ezra says they investigated themselves, one of the more significant parts of the document. Who was the supervisor? Did this have to do with the decision not to charge? Yeah, so this all coming out and Ezra responding and playing with it, Kash Patel kind of dictating the flow of this information. This, to me, highly speculative. But that whole binder situation that was missing, that Trump, I believe, probably left with, and that's why they were looking at Mar-a-Lago. I feel like they're just pulling documents out of this and are now sending them over to Congress, and like this is the narrative disclosure of that stuff.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also I'll be lame and say I think it's funny that he called it a continuing production.
Yeah.
But you know, again, you don't have to believe in full control of everything to believe that, as we said in the last segment, or at least as I would argue, these guys, we can say with confidence that Kash Patel, to your point, knows what happened, or at the very least, he knows what didn't happen. Like that's probably even easier to suggest. With all these investigations, they know that things have been hidden from them and obviously from the American people. And this feels like timed, coordinated rollout. The fact too that he's like really, I don't use defensive in a negative way, but he's kind of defensive over the idea that they're not going to disclose everything. Like he's saying the American people deserve. Like he made that point 3 times when he really didn't have to. The American people are going to see the full picture. I think that this is a guy, we keep using the term battle space recently, that understands the battle space about as well as anybody.
Oh, yeah. Especially this one.
Totally. Yeah, especially that this was like his battle space. Like he might as well be the general on this particular battlefield.
Yeah.
And I do take encouragement from that. And, you know, again, kind of similar to the first topic, I think I understand normies aren't necessarily paying attention to these, but as they say, the infamous saying, it's the cover up that gets you. It feels to me like a lot of the stonewalling that Kash is highlighting in the current narrative is meant to turn the eye, the public eye, onto the investigators, and rather than the quote unquote source of the crime. We obviously believe those are probably the same thing. But, you know, if you're in Normieville and you're thinking like, oh, we got to get to the bottom of J6, you're thinking of like, who did it? Whereas I think what we're going to find is that J6 itself, the investigation of J6, along with many other things, such as the 2020 election, it was the investigators that were the problem. And it makes sense to me that you would be rolling it out this way so that you can say like, hey, they're not answering Congress. They're not like every roadblock that the investigators put up grants more legal and narrative mandate for Kash to escalate the investigation.
Yeah, I do have to correct one thing I said. I think I said Mark Elias earlier, and I meant Michael Ellis. He was a former attorney, guy they put in at tried to put in at the NSA at the last minute back in January of 2021. And then after this stint, he went over to Rumble. He was their attorney during all the antitrust stuff. And now he's back at I think the CIA. But I want to go back to this clip because you're right. They are going to talk about some of this J6 stuff and some of these other things. And the one thing I think is notable here is they're talking about J6 again, something Trump talked about for a long time, and they're investigating it. They're talking about the Russia collusion hoax, something Trump talked about a lot. They're investigating it. They're getting to the bottom of the cocaine stuff. They're still going through the Epstein files. They are pretty much investigating all the things that Trump has continually talked about, except for what Trump has said the biggest crime ever is, and that's the rigged election. They're going after everything except the 2020 election, at least in terms of what they're talking about. And for a while there, I was like disappointed, but the more I thought about it today, it's a weird thing to leave out considering everything else. Like they're going after everything, including cocaine at the White House, which who gives a shit? And they're not talking about the election fraud. And that's notable to me.
Well, could I respond to that? Because I think it's like if you're laying out a mystery movie or like a murder investigation, a thriller, from a screenwriting perspective, and I'm not saying this like this is a movie. I mean like how it's being translated to people. You don't open with the twist, right? Like the twist is in the third act. But the first two acts, the first act is the setup. We've seen that for a long time. As you said, Trump has been talking about all these things for a long time. But what are these things to frame like J6 on down the line? Everything Cash is talking about, and Cash is investigating Crossfire Hurricane, etc. These are damages. Like the easiest way to put it is each of these scandals visited damages upon the American people on legal ways, censorship, mass psychological damage, etc. So that's what you'd do in a production. You'd be like, murder victim 1, murder victim 2, murder victim 3. Here's what they did, here's what they did, here's what they did. And really get that out there. And then when the twist is, we not only found out who did it, we found out that the people that were investigating the murders were the ones who were doing them. The power of that from a psychological level is huge. The reason I bring that up is in this case, we're not talking about a murder. I agree with you that the lack of election narrative here is glaring by omission. And if we do believe that they're going to eventually reform this and disclose just how bad the election fraud was, what better way than to just hammer home the damage after damage after damage that was done specifically because of the election fraud. You end with the election fraud to sort of wrap it all up.
Yeah, think. Cancon in the chat said their exposure of cover-ups. And the best way to expose a cover-up is to expose the crime itself first. Tends to be the best way to do it. I want to play more of this clip because he's going to talk about J6, and there's almost like a weird, awkward exchange in here. And I'll pause it once we get past it to see if you felt the same way.
Interview. But more importantly, people have had questions about January 6th and whether or not there were FBI sources, not agents, sources on the ground during January 6th. And I told you I would get you the definitive answer to that. And we have. And we are in the process, again, of working with our partners to divulge that information. And it is coming. And I will tell you this. The answer to that question will surprise and shock people because of what past FBI leaders have said about it.
And this is the part because we did find out there were like 20 some sources on the ground from the FBI. So listen to this part here.
Former FBI Director Chris Wray eventually admitted to Congress there were 26 FBI confidential human sources in around the Capitol January 6th, but not actual agents. Can you say that's true? Are there more than that? What you're learning from that?
I can say that is definitely a piece of the truth. Why it took a ton of time for and questioning in Congress for the director to get that point is what I'm trying to eliminate from the FBI. If Congress asks you a question under oath, whether or not there were sources in around January 6th at the Capitol, you as the director of the FBI need to know that and not deflect and give a DC answer. You have to be prepared for that. And that's the answer we're giving. That's the answer Chris Wray should have given.
And eventually everybody's going to know the whole picture.
Yeah, because the American people deserve that. And look, no one's more frustrated than me. Remember, I was chief of staff of the Department of Defense on January 6th. We said that we were ready, and the president had previously authorized the National Guard to be there days in advance. I spent 2 years, a small fortune, grand juries, to testify to the truth. And what happens now, years later? We were right. Bowser and Pelosi rejected that offer. And instead of figuring out how to prevent security lapses like that ever again, the American public spent tens of millions of dollars and countless hours on TV listening to conspiracy theories because those in positions of leadership failed to tell the American public the truth.
But there is a lot of conspiracy theories out there.
There are.
The Epstein thing, you dealt with Maria, you said, as far as you know, he killed himself.
I'm telling you, he killed himself.
The other thing on the internet is
And the meme died.
I know. That's a rug. Talk about a rug.
If the evidence exists, though, I said this the other day, I don't remember what show I was on, but why not just release that so we can all confirm that for ourselves?
It's not that the evidence exists, John. It's that the evidence of the conspiracy does not exist, according to Cash and Bongino.
I want to see it. It feels weird. CanCon's calling me a doomer.
I actually I liked his last message there. It's the rare case. We're going to get into that in another topic.
Which one?
The auto pen thing, because I do think that, to your point about elections, CanCon said
the auto pen lays the foundation to Biden's illegitimacy. Once that established, the election shall be exposed. Maybe.
Yeah, and I think that can go in a couple different ways, because the legitimacy question, I actually think that there's plenty of signs that the establishment regime is afraid of the election fraud narrative being the end game, and they are trying to distance themselves from it. So, Trump is amplifying the auto pen narrative, but the media is also like leaning into the Biden illegitimacy, but they're trying to rebrand it away from the auto pen. They're trying to rebrand it as that he wasn't cognitively there. I mean, we can go into that next. But.
Yeah, I feel like, we've ever since the auto pen story came out, like my point was, yeah, it's cool. Like, let's talk about how he's illegitimate, but I'd rather talk about how he's illegitimate because they stole the election. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I want to finish out the rest of this clip. There's a couple minutes left.
Epstein files. What's the answer to that?
The answer to that is the same as everything else. I'm not going to withhold information from the American public ever, but I'm also not going to rush to get it out there in a format in which they can't rely on it. So on the Epstein matter or any other matters, we are diligently working on that. And it takes time to go through years of investigations, years of political maneuvering, and years of cover-up to get the American people what they deserve. And that's what I'm going to give them on everything.
Yeah. And if somebody says, how long is that going to take? We always see investigations in Washington that end up in blue ribbon commissions, and it doesn't seem like anything comes from it. Do you think actual prosecutions will come from some of this stuff?
I think from some of this stuff, when we go back and look at things like the pipe bomber case, the cocaine in the White House, January 6th, and Crossfire Hurricane, the prosecutorial decisions will lay at the Department of Justice, but we are rigorously investigating them, and I think we've developed some great leads. And I also think we're not going to wait for any blue ribbon commissions. That's up to Congress. If they want to do that, that's totally fine. They're a coordinate branch of government. But we've got answers coming on all these matters.
You promise?
I do.
Your deputy, before he became deputy, said this.
Like many people, I believe the FBI knows the identity of this pipe bomber on January 6th, 4 years ago, and just doesn't want to tell us because it was an inside job.
Why didn't they find the bomber, the pipe bomber? They know who the pipe bomber is. The FBI knows who it is.
Does the FBI know who it is?
The FBI, under me and Dan Bongino's leadership, has reestablished that investigations of great public importance that almost blew up the DNC and RNC in Washington, D.C., an area in which then Vice President Harris was in the vicinity of, is something that needs to be answered.
Okay, maybe I'm just over analyzing this, but I just noticed this. Isn't it if you're making up a story or lying, you look to the left? Isn't that a thing?
I've heard that. Yeah, I don't know how true that is, but
I'm going to rewind just a little bit. Notice how he responds. He's kind of looking around. It seems like I'm not saying he's lying. I have no idea. And if he is, I'm sure he's doing it for good reasons. But this seems like
studies have debunked these claims, John.
Who said that?
Google.
Okay.
Google said it's been debunked, and also it was the inverse.
I take it all the way. What do you mean?
If you're looking to the left, it indicates truthfulness. The right indicates lying.
Okay, so then we need to figure out if this is a mirror image or not.
Right.
I know who it is.
The FBI, under me and Dan Bongino's leadership,
You looked right there first.
has reestablished that investigations of great public importance that almost blew up the DNC and RNC in Washington, D.C., an area in which then Vice President Harris was in the vicinity of, is something that needs to be answered. And we learned that FBI leadership in the prior administration slow-rolled and basically shut that investigation off. So we turned it on. And we have some great leads. And Dan is actually going to talk about that when he does Fox and Friends tomorrow.
Okay. You don't want to give us a little something?
I can't get ahead of everybody.
All right. All right.
There you have it. The chat is split on, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? It just seems like he wasn't, it seems like he was walking a tightrope there. He wanted to be very careful about what he said. And I don't know. And I made this point earlier, I think on my show this morning. Like it's great that we might find out who had the cocaine. It's great about the J6 stuff. It's great about, what was the other one that Dan Bongino said they're going to look into? There's one more. I don't remember the other one.
Yeah, I don't remember.
There's like 3 things, and while great, it's like, to me, the one
that much.
the one that I want is the freaking election fraud. Like, show me that. Like, I know all these people were lying. Expose the crimes, great. Like, let's put some people in jail that committed crimes. I'm down with that totally. I just feel like so much of this is another rerun. Maybe I'm getting sick of the reruns.
Yeah, I think there are consequences to. I think there's consequences to what we do. This kind of audience does, where we are attempting to front run things to figure out where things are going, not just like, oh, I was right, but to figure out where things are going, so you can guard yourself against. So you can see bullshit coming, you can see good things coming. That's what we've spent years trying to do. And there does feel like, I mean, on some level, if you kind of take this back to the whole 2024 campaign, fake campaign, real campaign, like the sort of the story behind Trump, golden age, DOGE, justice, prosperity, all this stuff, there is some level of understanding you can have that these are all future, like you are laying out a future roadmap when you are campaigning. And obviously it's going to take time for that. So that can be true. It can also be true that we think Cash probably knows what he's doing and is read in on the stuff that we think he's read in on, while also being understandable, or should be understandable to them. If people are like, I mean, Cash, you spent 4 years going on very prominent podcasts talking about like day one transparency and like, we're immediately going to tell you, we are immediately going to, and now again, we can be adults and be like, it doesn't actually work that way. But what that means is that, understandably or not, you were selling a narrative a few years ago, and you're not actually doing that narrative. You may be eventually, but when you answer a question, like if you superimposed him over Chris Wray at that last question, when he's like, can you tell us that there are prosecutions that will come out of this? And Cash is like, I can say that if anybody did anything wrong, we will recommend that things happen to them, but we have no control over that. And it's like, okay, that's honest. That might be honest, but it's not what you said a couple of years ago. So both can be true. Like, people get very upset when you say that, but both of those things can be true.
Yeah. And this is where it's hard, when we are trying to front run things. And, I think the purpose of trying to front run this stuff is trying to figure out, like, hey, where are we ultimately going, and what is our role in helping us get there? Totally. You know what I mean? And when it comes to all these other stuff, like I said, it would be cool to find that people that committed crimes go to jail. But the crime that affects the most people and the most of us is the election one. And we're like, here's Brett Baier, you're interviewing this guy and you're talking about all these things. But it's almost the same script that Maria Bartiromo had a week ago. Like, he's asking the same questions. He's just following up. Like, why isn't anybody from the mainstream media asking about the 2020 Stone election? Trump is still talking about that, but nobody's touching it.
He tried to with Brett Baier, remember?
Yeah. And Brett Baier tried to move on.
and he tried to. So that's actually an interesting angle, is the fact that Bartiromo and Bayer and all these people are all too eager to talk about. You know what? That actually just sparked a thought, and this is stupid, but I'll just go with it. Is cash, like there is some, Chris has kind of said similar stuff to this when it comes to Epstein in particular. It's possible that many of the most sensational narratives that we were programmed with as kind of MAGA and the America First and the quote unquote conspiracy base, were not exactly what we thought they were. Like if you want to play this game of taking cash at his absolute word, and even regarding the Epstein stuff, like him and Bongino at their word, then you can play a game where all of these different massive conspiracies, a lot of it was amplified by the establishment to distract, whether they were real crimes or not, to distract from the most important crimes that they committed. So is part of what's going on here Cash kind of not being able to say what we're talking about, where he's like, it doesn't matter that much. Like, there's much bigger things we're worrying about. And some of the conspiracies around J6 are not true. I mean, I don't know. I'm making a devil's advocate argument. Or Epstein, like, is it true that he did really kill himself? And like, the story was the story as far as we were told it. And that Cash knows that it was the quote unquote enemy that really amplified that narrative out there. And what does Bear and Bartiromo and all your favorite TV characters, as Chris would say, on the liberal or conservative side of the aisle, what do they not want to talk about? They don't want to talk about like the judicial branch and how they're essentially involved in an insurrection against the sitting president. They don't want to talk about the 2020 election and how the election system, whether it's fake or real, the truth is it is not trusted. And that's the number one thing. And that is a lot of what Cash ran on himself, is saying people need to trust the FBI. They need to trust all these things. And they don't. Like, that's just a flat out, we don't trust them. So, I don't know. It's just one other way of looking at it. Is he trying to be like, these aren't really these aren't going to be giant revelations, because the big revelations are actually going to be election fraud, that sort of thing.
But he's not saying a word about any of that stuff. He's not hinting at these other revelations. If I just with the mainstream, I don't remember what I was trying to say now, but with the mainstream media and like these people, they want to move on and stall just as much as Congress does, just as much as the judicial branch does. Like, they're all in it together. They're all part of the uniparty. And this is where I come back to the frustration of operating within that battle space when I don't think they need to anymore. Like, they could be getting the messaging out that they want, but instead they're getting out the messaging that I feel like is controlled and that the other side would more so want. So like you said, the other side would much rather them talk about who had cocaine at the White House, especially if they're trying to throw Biden under the bus right now. They'd much rather talk about that than talk about how Biden got there in the first place. And that's what I feel like we're just getting a lot of. We're getting a lot of grandstanding from everybody. And it was actually hilarious tonight on Twitter. Annapolina Luna, of all people, had a post. I should just read it, because this was a classic from her.
Is she doing the face turn? She's
no, she's real sick of grandstanding. The lady who is spending taxpayer dollars on investigating a 6-year-old crime is upset with Congress grandstanding. I'm fed up. We fought tooth and nail to get President Trump back in office, the best president of our lifetime, and yet this Congress has no urgency, no backbone, and no vision. We can't even lock in DOGE spending cuts, an issue we've been complaining about for nearly a decade. It's embarrassing. We don't need more grandstanding. We need results. Like, what a joke.
You could have written this tweet.
What do you mean?
I mean, everything she's saying is true. She's just...
Well, I just think it's hilarious that she's the one doing it. Like, she's literally
Trump's
wasting
going to retweet her.
Yeah, it's probably. He's been retweeting DC Drano lately, which has been driving me nuts. But yeah, like this whole thing is just, it's like one big theatrical waste of time, and everybody's in on it. Okay, we can call it production. Everybody's in on it. And when you're trying to front run this stuff and you see all the truth and what's been going on, like I feel like us and most of the people in our audience have, like, I'm just like, how long do we have to participate in this production when we're waiting for everybody to switch theaters? Like, we're in the other theater waiting for those guys to get done watching their damn movie so we can start our movie.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, like
but the movie they're watching is retarded, and the only one that matters is this movie. You know what I mean?
we already know what happens. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's not even that. And it's like they could ruin the plot to that, and it wouldn't affect the. I don't know. It's not the perfect metaphor, but because I mean, if you're gonna watch it, it's not a sequel. It's not a sequel because it's a movie you should be able to watch separately before the other one. Because the other one's I don't know.
Something I said earlier in a different conversation was the difference in the movie theories, or not even the theories, but the way people engage with the movie theories and the control theories. To me, if I ask you what is Inception about, and you start summarizing the plot, you are not answering the question, right? But like half of the people that you ask would do that.
It's a pyramid scheme to sell spinny tops.
That is what it's about. That's the ultimate dream layer. But that's kind of how I think of this stuff, is that you can try to figure out what the plot is and maybe know the plot ahead of quote unquote Normieville. But if all you're doing is like reciting the plot to them, nothing is coming out of that in a long-term basis. It's like, oh, good job. You remembered the events that occur in the movie, or predicted the events that occur in the movie. But when you really ask somebody what is Inception about, they should start talking to you about trauma catharsis and like, you know, reality versus fantasy and all these kinds of things, right? Like that's what the movie is about. And that's how I think of whatever Trump and company are doing in their production. And I think this story, at least, is a controlled production. Cash is weaseling his way around those answers. And I think the reason he's doing that is because he knows what he's supposed to be talking about and what he's not. So we can understand that. But the reason that, you know, we have these discussions is because we are trying to figure out what is the movie about, not what is going to happen in the movie. And one of the major reasons we keep coming back to the election is because we hope and think that a big part of this movie is about fundamental mistrust in our systems. Especially the ones that put our government in place in the first place. To me, the movie isn't about this stuff happened on January 6th. I don't really care about the plot details of what happened on J6 and like how many feds there were. I care about J6 insofar as it helps me get a better understanding. Whatever disclosure comes out of it, if it helps me get a better understanding of the theme, which is what the deep state's been doing, sure. But otherwise, you know, that's how I distinguish it.
And I feel like we got such a good indication of what they were already doing back in this first term. And then it just got even more in the Devo term. And now it's like, Band-Aid off, guys, let's go. And we're just waiting. And I'm good with waiting. If we have to end up waiting the whole time, and that's another part of the reason, not only are we trying to like front run the stuff to figure out where our role is in it, but let's just say we've been wrong or things go wrong along the way. Okay. And we don't get all the things done that we need to by the time Trump is done and his term is up. Like one of the most important things you could have going into establishment candidate 2.0 or whatever, like back to the way things were, is like a local community of people that you can rely on and trust on and affect things at the local level. So again, it comes down to like getting connected and the Badlander stuff that we're trying to do. So important. But yeah,
you didn't hit people with an Panuna, by the way. They're mad.
Well, I haven't seen a rant about it yet.
Oh, is that what it is?
I thought that was the new rule.
Talking about it. All right.
I mean, if we just talk about it, we can't. I guess. No, I have to wait for a rant. I already said it.
Okay.
That's the rules. One rant. Those are the rules. Do the APL.
It's been codified.
Them's are the rules. But yeah, so, you know, one of the kind of the bigger general topics I wanted to discuss tonight, and we kind of have been, so maybe we don't even need to spend that much more time on it. But it's like, as this term is unfolding, and we're seeing things play out, and we're not necessarily, or at least the expectations I was having going into this term and what we're actually seeing in reality, it's falling short. Like the expectations I had were very high. I was very excited, and we're just not getting it. And so like, as that's happening, you have to at some point start changing your expectations to at least try to be more realistic. or at least setting expectations, because that's one thing. I feel like there's so many people that don't even have they're just like,
right, they're
give it
passive
time,
observers.
give it time,
Yeah,
give it time. And like that's something I don't think is good enough, because how are you ever going to get a response if you're just willing to give somebody all the time in the world? Like at some point you have to send a deadline, and we can discuss what that deadline is. We can come up with it together, and I'll stand by it. But right now we haven't even been having these discussions. Like we need to be evolving our expectations. If anything, with how slow things have been going, our expectations need to become more urgent and even higher, because there's so much further to go, because we didn't get enough done yet. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah, and again, as I kind of said earlier, I think that when people call this dooming or blackpilling, it's not, or at least in my view, it's not. It's I think that this is what I think, and I would like to think that this is what Trump, patriots, etc., the patriots that we talked about, want. That they want that mandate back. Said a million times on this show in the last 6 months or so. Trump labeled the 2024 election a mandate election for many reasons. One of them was that he knew it was a fake election, probably. But another one is I think he was trying to really hard code that concept into the public mind. That I need the mandate of the American people. And just my opinion on the slow roll, again, like it's been 4 months. It has been time, but it also has been 4 months out of whatever, it's, what are we, 15% of the way through or something like that. I just made that up, so it's probably horrible math.
We have, yeah, go ahead, keep going.
48 months. So
44
less
left.
than 15%. Probably like 8% through.
Okay, now I have to pull out a calculator.
Do something with a calculator. Ask AI. Ask Grok.
I can just
ask Grok to find a calculator and do a math problem. This is what people are going to start doing with AI. They're going to put like 6 new barriers between them and the thing they could have just done.
I think it's like 8%, a little over 8% of the way.
All right. My second one was more right. So, but I think that, I am the story guy, and that's why I'm going to have more patience with this. It's not because I don't agree with everything you're laying out. It's just because of my framing of how I look at these things is more of what are they trying to do from a narrative level. I don't know, but it feels to me like whatever they're trying to do on a narrative level in the first half of 2025, they know what it is and are like coordinating and immediately pivoting. They're pivoting from DOGE to growth. And
You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Actually, keep it that way. Don't fix it. But I do have a question for you once you get your mic fixed. Still muted. What is he doing? Can you hear me? You are muted. Your mic is not working. Oh.
I know. I have to leave and come back because when my Yeti unplugs itself, it won't reconnect.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's annoying.
Okay.
It's the plug.
Well, you do that. I'll read through a couple rants and then remind me to ask you about the narrative.
Fine.
When we get back. Which, speaking of that, this Sunday, everybody, I'll be joining you on the narrative. Okay, a couple rants though. While we're waiting, I'm actually, you know what? I have a sponsor. I have another sponsor we can discuss. How about I do that instead? Hold for processing. All right, Save Pulse. Today's show is also sponsored by Save Pulse. Save Pulse is dedicated to keeping you and your family healthy with top quality medications like amoxicillin, azithromycin, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine at unbeatable prices. The streamlined ordering process makes it easy to stock up on all your health essentials. Now with exciting news about fenbendazole showing promising cancer research, they proudly offer this alongside antibiotics and other viral care meds. Don't wait. Prepare for any health scenario today. Get your supply and stay ahead of the curve with Save Pulse. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/meds and use promo code SAVEHEALTH at checkout to get a 20% discount on orders over $100. That's badlandsmedia.tv/meds.
Man, we could, this is working now, right?
Yep, unfortunately.
We could hit it tonight, but we could also fold in some of the Biden Devo stuff into Sunday night.
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Fun one to talk about because it's
Yeah.
It's what I'm fascinated in about that, for anybody not aware, the whole like Politburo comments and how the media is saying the auto pen is related to this. But to me, what's most interesting about that narrative is there are dueling narratives going on, like in the establishment.
Before we move on to that, can we? I want to finish up this little segment here. So you were saying something about like the narrative and what you're seeing unfolding, and maybe that's the whole point. And so I'm curious, like, what do you think we've seen narratively these first 4 months that is like encouraging? You know what I mean?
Well,
I'm getting conflicting narratives, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that, I mean, one of the, I think, earliest writings I did was called the Good Reset. And then I had another one that was I used Inception as the framing device in a few of my early articles that were not Righteous Russia. And the reason I use the Hegelian dialectic so much in commentary is because I believe that patriots are using that from a narrative level. And again, that's problem, reaction, solution, thesis, synthesis, antithesis. And they're using it because it works. So the reason that I'm encouraged in some ways by what's going on here, while getting that on an actual level, like nothing has really happened, is that you have to lay out the thesis. Like the thesis is the dogeing and all this kind of stuff in the golden age. That's the main story that Trump and them are selling. And I think what's going on here at the beginning of his second term is the antithesis to the thesis. So he's demonstrating, or the system is demonstrating, just because they knew this would happen this way, that the thesis as laid out is not possible in our current system. That sounds like a doomer take, but I have long believed that on some level that's what's going on here. Like we all believe when we talk about election fraud, we know that Trump knows it's a fake election, right? So why didn't he just overturn it? Like, why didn't they just arrest everybody? And it's not because I'm thinking people are stupid who wanted that. We all wanted that outcome. Obviously, they didn't do that, and I believe they didn't do that for a reason. So if I'm trying to trace why didn't they do that, I'm guessing it's because they know it would not have brought them to the synthesis. It would not have brought them to where they want to go. So if I believe that the thesis is the golden age, and the synthesis will be the actualization of the golden age, which means technology, it means real elections, it means prosecutions and justice and all this kind of stuff, trust maybe from the American people in their government. If I believe that that's the end game, then everything that I see right now of like the administration getting stonewalled, unelected judges stopping them at every point in time, everything we talk about every week, that would be a core feature of the Hegelian dialectic you are laying out if you're the patriots. And I know that the response to that would be, we know this stuff. But how many times did we get annoyed leading up to the 2024 election and even following it when people calling themselves MAGA and more importantly, kind of truthers, just wanted to take the win as we got it and move forward? I would argue that many of those people now feel less like that because of all the stonewalling they are seeing. I would bet you that more people who praise the 2024 election results because we got what we wanted are less happy with unelected judges and unelected congressmen and women stonewalling the guy that won. So to me, it's almost like the story Trump is selling and Elon is helping him with it is, yeah, guys, winning fake elections and like just doing the same thing is not gonna work. So I will be wrong if they don't then do something that works, right? Like that's what all of this is predicated on. It's just that I kind of feel like that's why they're doing it this way. They're telling people like, see, did you guys get hoodwinked, as Chris would say, into thinking that voting me in again was what you needed? Are you learning? Are you starting to understand? Even Elon's framing about DOGE is like he's talking to 5-year-olds. He's like, yep, turns out that the government bureaucracy and the swamp exists for a reason, and a really smart guy can't come in and do anything about it, neither can the president. So we need a different solution to these problems. And
yeah,
what those solutions are, I don't know, but that's what I like speculating on.
And that's the part that's missing, in my opinion, is even from these people, the people that are selling us like the narrative and what is happening, like we know they're trying to lead us towards this golden age, right? Like that's the end goal. But we're running into all these issues. Where's the solution to this? Like, why aren't they talking about the solution when it's got to be available? Like, I think it's fixing our election system and exposing all the crime and stuff, right? Like, not just exposing the cover up of the crime, but like, let's get down and dirty and just expose the election fraud and all the shit. Like, let's cut the red tape. I don't need any of that. I want the pace right now. I don't want to pace it out and time it for the normies, you know? I'm
not arguing that. I agree with that.
But the fact that they're not talking about the solution aspect of it is what's weird to me, because I know they know what the solution is.
Yeah.
And are we going to go another midterm election without that solution?
Right.
Maybe, probably. It seems that way. And so it's just interesting to me, because like I'm seeing the narrative play out that we're being sold from Trump, and it's a consistent one. It's the one he's been selling for a long time, Make America Great Again. Like, despite all these terrible, terrible things, we're heading towards the golden age, right? And it's like, okay, you're saying all this stuff that's bad, but we're going to the golden age. You're saying all this stuff that's good, taking us into the golden age. But the actuals of what I'm seeing conflict with that. Yeah. And there's clear and obvious, obstacles in the path from where we are to the golden age. All the framework and everything is being laid, which is the encouraging sign. Like, the switch theory could be more than just switching on like a light switch in terms of production and chips and everything. It could also be in terms of just the golden age and jumping from here over the obstacles generally. But I don't know. We haven't crossed that bridge yet, so
yeah,
I'm not going to bank on that being the situation.
Yeah, and I think that's what I don't think you should. Like I said, when I laid out at the beginning, like, there is an ultra bull case of are they talking about growth in all caps and futurism and the age of abundance, which is that's how Elon frames the golden age, and people black pill about it. But again, you've just got to consider the worst possibilities, which we do often, like threat assessing. You also have to consider the other side of that, of saying like, Elon has Optimus robots built. They exist. If you go on YouTube and watch videos of what they're doing, the whole comments section believes that they are fake. They are real. They are coming. They are going to blow people's minds. And before I got into, I know I keep saying this on shows, but before I got into an autonomous Tesla and it drove me all around my town, I would have been looking at all of this from an intellectual lens and being like, yeah, sure, as an idea. I am telling you, when cars without drivers start showing up to pick people up and people don't know that that's what's coming, it's going to shatter people's brains. That's never been a thing that's existed. So this was the one that went viral, and it's just demonstrating the articulation and how far it's progressing, right? And what you've got to do with these things and with autonomy in general is imagine exponential growth curves, because that's how AI models work. The other insane breakthrough that was just going really viral the last couple of days with Elon stepping out is that they've just discovered or unlocked that the Optimus system can now watch videos and learn that way, right? Crazy. So now you could say all of this and doom out about it, and you might be right. But if Trump is accelerating this timeline and this technology, which he absolutely, verifiably, factually is doing, then you either have to believe that Trump is totally wrong about that or is goose-stepping us into the deep state reset, or that Elon and Trump are actually right, and the golden age, as Trump has said 1,000,000 times, is going to be unlike anything you could have imagined. So even though we throw aside sometimes oh yeah, maybe it'll be like sunshine and rainbows, I strongly push back on people that are like, it's impossible for us to get anything resembling like a golden age or anything like that. I think that attitude is exactly like why this stuff hasn't been attempted. And if we believe that the deep state has been engineering the world to be the way it is for centuries, then wouldn't it stand to reason that there might be another way, right? So like, but I also agree with you, we can't rely on this stuff, right? It's just it's just a scenario that's being laid out. And either way, I think Badlands' role and what we're trying to do is maybe patriots need us as the audience, as the MAGA base, to forward these narratives, and that's why we push it so strongly, right? Like we always talk about that. The devolution sandwich, as you would call it.
Man, it's a little discouraging when you see a robot dance better than you. And now, what's this Xpeng Chinese version?
Yeah, I don't know much about that. And I just, a comment too on the technology, and I know people disagree with this. Like, this is just my stance. I've inverted my mind on these things. Anytime human beings have developed an exponential growth of technology, a transition from one to the other, there is disruption, but it has always, every single time, resulted in net increases in human life and abundance. Every single time. Every time. There has never been a time where the Luddites were correct. That doesn't mean that the internet is all good. It also doesn't mean that the robots are going to be all good. It's just that technology is a human extender. And, you know, I think one of the most troubling narratives I see that I think Trump and Elon are sort of deprogramming MAGA of is MAGA is super recalcitrant to look at futurism at all because they're afraid of it. And it's like, this is why we can't have nice things, because conservative people have not wanted to look into a future where technology actually allows us to achieve the things that they wanted to achieve.
I think the reason that I'm not scared of a future like that, but the reason I'm not excited about it at this current moment is because we haven't fixed the underlying problem with why all the things have gone bad right now without this technology.
Right.
Until we fix like what's wrong with our government and the amount of control they have over our lives, I don't think adding technology like this is necessarily a good thing. That's my holdup with it. Like, I'm not scared of a robot, but I'm scared of who's controlling the robot and what the people are making laws are doing over regulations with robots and AIs. Like that's the shit that bugs me. It has nothing to do with the technology itself. It's who's there at the lever of power and control of it.
Totally. And Elon says that all the time, which is why I like that he's super open about that. Like, there is not only a golden age case to be made for all of these things. Like I said, they're human extenders. That's good and bad. It depends on what you think of humans. I'm just saying that I don't think that those two things are divorced or unrelated. I think that it's possible that technological advancement is a big part of the solution. G-Money would be blowing up right now talking about Bitcoin as a technology, right?
Yeah.
What is, like, and this is arguments we've had on the back end and everything. I'm not saying you, but Ash and G-Money, Chris and G-Money, etc. G-Money's argument is that the technology of money is broken, and that, yes, human beings are corruptible, etc., but that when they have a broken money to exploit, it is easier for evil people to leverage power over good people. So in that scenario, like, one way of looking at it, though, almost the way you just framed it, would be, well, we need to fix the banking system and make it not evil anymore, and then we can worry about going into new technology. What if the technology is the solution to the banking system? Like, that's the argument with Bitcoin, and it like looks like it obviously is. So in that specific example, fix the money, fix the world might be too much of what maximalists say. But if you don't want fiat bankers being able to print money out of nothing and fund all of the government programs we've been talking about, then you need to get rid of fiat money. Well, how do you get rid of fiat money? You need something to replace it with. That's a technology.
Yeah, I mean, I get that argument, and I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time debating Bitcoin, but like, you could easily make the argument that all the evil people with all the evil fiat can buy the Bitcoin, because that's how you get Bitcoin, is trading in your evil fiat. And so, I mean, we're going to have to be trusting like Michael Saylor and all these whales that they're going to be the good guys now, the good God kings.
You don't have to trust them. You can just take your own Bitcoin.
I mean, I know, but we don't know what that future looks like yet. We're speculating on what it might look like. and saying that just having some of the Bitcoin will prevent you from, not falling victim to the people with 10% of the Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like those are arguments I'm not ready to defend yet, because I haven't seen what that future looks like, and I don't know what the plan is. And it's just hard for me to imagine that, like even having your own Bitcoin separate, which I do believe in. I believe that's the future we're going to. Clearly, like there's a ton of signal around Bitcoin, but it's still a concern of mine that it is like a guy like Michael Saylor. I don't know him personally, and he's going to own a shit ton of Bitcoin, and he's going to be loaning it out and like earning interest and stuff like on Bitcoin. Like it's not a perfect way to move from one system to the next. You know what I mean? Like there are still concerns to be had.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's concerns. I didn't like what he said at the conference yesterday or today, where he was talking about not needing proof of reserves. And I've been a big Saylor defender and like a lot of his ideation, but I didn't like that and would call that out. But the argument there again, and G frames this similarly. It's to me, it's just kind of funny because it's like I'm not really even arguing with you. It's the macro argument here is that I think we get locked into a lot of binaries in this audience. Like we know the deep state exists. The way I see it, we are living in the nightmare world. Like we are in the bad timeline. Literally, we have been in the bad timeline our whole lives. And somebody like on one example of the money, G comes along and says, "I'm telling you to arm yourselves in cyberspace." For the way to front run the way that the battle space is shifting.
Yeah.
And you're right to point out all the risks and threats that are on that new battle space. But when the longsword was giving way to the longbow, if you were like, well, the longbow isn't going to solve up, people are still going to get killed by other people with longbows. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you don't get the longbow, you're not even going to be on that battlefield. You're done. So I think G, like he talks about the golden age and stuff because I think he thinks that's where we're going. He might be wrong about that. And I think the same thing. But the argument is that this is one of the weapons and technologies that helps us fight against this stuff. Where right now, and the Trumps themselves, like Donald Trump Jr. gave like a 30-minute speech yesterday laying out all the reasons why he likes Bitcoin. And the main thing that they're talking about is defense. He said, my family has been debanked. You can't debank somebody with Bitcoin, right? Like, it doesn't mean you can't do something else to them. It doesn't mean that you can't torture them and get their seed phrase. Like, I know all those examples. But guess what? It means you can't go into a ledger that you control and click a button and turn off my financial energy. And that's never existed.
That's not the argument I'm making. I'm making the argument of like oligarchs exist in this current system, and there are going to be oligarchs in the future system of Bitcoin. Like the people who own the most Bitcoin are going to have the most power and power projection. And we're still going to be in a situation where we're trusting that those people aren't going to abuse that power. It's human nature to abuse that power. Just having a certain technology is not going to prevent bad people from doing bad things. And
it's going to allow yourself to defend yourself against that. That doesn't mean successfully. Like I agree with that.
Maybe, yeah.
If you don't have the longbow, you're done. If you do have the longbow, you can fight. It doesn't mean you're going to win.
I'm not arguing that. I'm saying the bad people are still going to exist in that system. Like it's the oligarchy that we're going to have trouble getting away from, period. And so I don't even remember how we got onto this specific topic, but I feel like
I think it was about the whole techno-futurism, the stuff Elon's talking about, and I think some of the stuff Trump's talking about, even the switch theory stuff.
The switch theory stuff, yeah.
If we're looking for actuals, I think you brought up a good point a few minutes ago that the switch stuff, if we're looking for actuals so far, that's probably the most encouraging stuff to me. Maybe that's why I've been writing more about financial stuff and energy stuff than politics, because I totally agree with you in terms of the DOJ and all that. Like, this is all being slow rolled. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But these executive orders are signed. Like, these investments are coming in. These factories are being built, and it's just if we think that it's the quote unquote white hat plan that they are behind doing this, you've got to think they are looking at that future battle space and saying, this is a huge key to us, maybe to your point, rather than like, oh, we're just going to go into the golden age, it's going to be abundant and amazing. Maybe it's not like that. Maybe it's more that Trump is saying we're screwed if we don't arm ourselves energy-wise, etc., going forward, which is what a lot of their framing is. They talk about defense, they talk about chips and all that kind of stuff from the perspective of warfare. So it might be that we are in a long era of transition of kind of battling about these new technologies. But Trump and team, what I'm confident in is they want us accelerating, not decelerating. And I think a lot of MAGA wants to decelerate. They want to go in the opposite direction.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like the way things are going and lining up technologically with the money and everything, or in Bitcoin at least, is encouraging and it's exciting. And I am curious to see how that stuff plays out in the even the next 2 to 3 years before Trump leaves office. I think we're going to see a lot of those things fall into place.
Yeah,
like some of the manufacturing, the data centers, the nuclear energy stuff. That stuff's very, very interesting. And who knows, like a year from now with the advancements AI is making, we could be talking about futuristic shit we can't even like fathom right now. Like who effing knows? It just, to me, it always comes back down to like when I think of future stuff and game theory, the way my brain works is I like to think of the problems that are going to encompass that as well and come along with that. And all of the, I want to rid ourselves of all the issues that we are facing before we get to the golden age, because that's what's going to make it golden is if we leave those things behind. And I see the framework being put into place for that golden age, so I know that's coming. And I just want to also see the part where we leave, we shed the dead skin on our way into that golden age. And that's the part that I'm pushing for.
Yeah, and I think that framing is good too, because I would guess that this type of discussion, I would hope that that's been happening in the quote unquote patriots. Even though we believe that there are plans and everything, I don't think that they're a monolith, right? I'm sure that people around Trump have argued vehemently against some of the things that he's pushing for, and he's argued against some of the things they're pushing for, right? And I think a lot of it is probably in line with what this discussion is, which is, is pushing the accelerator down the way to get away from those problems? Or, to your point, is that potentially going to speed us headfirst into a problem we didn't see coming? I think that's probably part of what they've been trying to navigate, right? How do we get this energy transition without, for example, without destroying an entire generation of industry built around the previous energy systems? It's like disarming a bomb while you're trying to speed forward into the future.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. There's more I want to talk about before we. Maybe we should save the AutoPen stuff for Sunday.
Okay, I'll save that. Yeah. So Sunday night, John's going to join me on the narrative. We're going to figure out kind of a macro stuff, obviously about devolution from a narrative perspective. And I think the Biden Politburo Committee, there's a narrative war going on in the regime, it seems, about how they're trying to tell the story of what was going on with Biden. And I think we could have some fun with that and relate it to devolution, the real story of devolution, and where we are with that.
Let's give a teaser. I'm going to play 2 clips for a little teaser for you, okay? But we're not going to talk about it, so restrain yourself, Brain.
Well, and it did seem like there's so many people who you would have thought would have access to him who didn't, because of this inner circle that really much managed his schedule and his time and his access in a way that didn't give a lot of people one-on-one time with him. In the book, you quote a longtime Biden aide basically admitting he shouldn't be running again. They said to you on page 85, he just had to win, and then he could disappear for 4 years. He'd only have to show proof of life every once in a while. His aides could pick up the slack. Who would have been running the White House in a second Biden term?
Well, this person went on to say that when you're voting for a president, you're voting for the aides around him. But these aides were not even Senate confirmed aides. These are White House aides. These were unelected people. And one of the things that really, I think, comes out in our reporting here is that if you believe, and I think a lot of these people do sincerely believe, that Donald Trump was and is an existential threat to democracy, you can rationalize anything, including sometimes doing undemocratic things, which I think is what this person is talking about.
Like stealing an election. And then this is the other clip I want to play from back in October of 2024.
Who's actually the president, Mr. President?
Well, I think it's a committee of people, and they might not even know who the committee is. They may not even know themselves. Does that make sense? It's a group of people that are in different levels of DC and they surround a man that was not the most capable person. By the way, never was.
We'll leave it at that.
Good tease. Just the tip.
Great tease. Just the tip. Okay, let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the conflict stuff, like the Putin and some of the Truth Social posts that Trump has put out about Putin, which I think are kind of funny. This whole story of that conflict, going from leading up to it, like I'm going to end that war, leading up to the election, I'm going to end that war before I even take
24
office.
hours, yeah.
It's going to take 24 hours. The second I win, 24-hour countdown, it's over. And then he gets into office, and we're sending negotiators over there, and he has a good call with Putin, not so good with Zelensky. Then Zelensky throws a fit, and then Putin does some bombing, and like Putin's crazy. Like there's just all over the map, this story, from Zelensky's super bad to Putin's super bad to everything in between. And then we had this post the other day, which I thought was just almost borderline hysterical.
Yeah.
What Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad. He's playing with fire. And so the reason I think this is so funny is because the war started in February of 2022, right?
Yeah.
And it was like roughly 3 years, almost 3 years of Trump technically not being in office, yet none of those really bad things, and I mean really bad things, happened to Putin. And so it's only been 4 months. But it's just, it's almost like a slight Devo proof type thing, you know,
Totally.
but it's just an absurd kind of post. And I love when Trump does this, because I bet tomorrow or the next day he'll put out like, Putin's such a great guy. We're bros. He's a really smart man. All these things. I really see that there's a path forward to the end of this conflict. If only Zelensky would play along, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you that this is one of those posts that's like comedic. And it's so funny because I think it shows the different layers of the info war. That it's like that old meme from Survivor where something gross is happening and you got the two girls freaking out and then the guy behind them is like smiling. Like Trump puts this out and a liberal is like Armageddon and a neocon is like Armageddon, and then this community is like these guys. I'd love to imagine that Trump and Putin are like sitting together while he's like, I'm gonna put this one out. What do you think? Is it too much? But it is a soft Evo proof to me. I've been saying for the whole time that from an international level, I think it's arguable that more of the actual effects or reasons for the devolution operation were international. I think a lot of the American or U.S. effects of it were psychological and narrative, which I like, but like he's right. Thanks, Otter Creek.
We have
we
YouTube
were talking about
members.
otters yesterday.
I didn't know he had YouTube members.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Is he like a subscriber?
It's a triangle with otter imagery. Is this the Otter Illuminati?
Otter Creek and Rio Grande.
Remember we were talking about otters yesterday?
Oh yeah. Well, I've seen this guy in there before, but I don't know.
Coincidence?
I don't know what it means to be a member. That must be like subscriptions, right?
I think probably. I'm just more fascinated that there's like an Illuminati otter organization I didn't know about, because I know about a lot of them. I track those.
Illuminati otter.
Otters Anonymous.
Oh, we do. So we have one member now. Nice. That is nuts. See, there's something I've been complaining about, the censorship free speech stuff, and it does seem like we may have been unleashed on YouTube.
Something's going on.
Something weird is going on. Yeah. So make sure you guys go and give us a like over on.
Yeah.
On
go over
YouTube.
there, hit the like, come back if you want to come back. I think international diva is a thing. I think these guys are flirting with each other. And I actually think that this whole narrative is highly related to what we talked about most of tonight, which is Trump running into roadblocks. Because as Trump is dangling out the bait of will they, won't they with Russia, who's jumping all over it? The EU and Germany are like, nice. We got Trump back in the warmonger seat, and we're going full bore. So to your point, when Trump rugs them, which he's gonna do, then all you're left with again is Europe warmongering against Russia alone.
Well, let's talk about this, like some of the narratives versus actuals. Like the narrative we were getting, as we were mentioning, is very optimistic. We're going to end this war very quickly, peace everywhere, the peacemaker, right? But that hasn't happened yet. And how long are we, like, what do you think the reason is that he was so optimistic going into it? Must have ran into some sort of roadblock to not follow through on that. I mean, I think there's,
according to the public narrative.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's one of those guys, like, where typically when he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. I know he can be hyperbolic, but he was very adamant and said multiple times that the peace deal was like imminent as soon as he got into office. And it didn't happen that way. It's just a fact. And so something must have changed, at least in terms of what he was thinking was going to happen. And so what do you think that is? And how long do you think what are we waiting for to get to that peace?
I'm never going to be able to prove this, so like I can't win the argument. But I think the deals
I'm not
are
having
done.
an argument. I'm just asking a question.
No, I'm just saying the general argument on this. I think the deals are done very literally. I think that we are literally watching a narrative disclosure of those deals, and specifically in this theater, the reason for that is public mandate, and this time not really of Americans. I think a lot of this narrative is targeted at Europeans. So they've got, they're canceling political parties over there. Talk about fake elections. Every month there's a fake election over there. Huge distrust of institutions in Europe. And now Trump, I think, is demonstrating in the narrative his intent to have peace with Russia. And just like we talked about with a lot of the US stuff with Congress, according to the narrative, what is the roadblock he's running into? Basically, it's Europe. It's Europe and it's Ukraine. So they keep stopping the peace deal from happening. And I think that that is the point of this. I think the point of it is for people to understand that Trump wants the peace deals to happen, and I think they will, and that everybody else who is not Trump or Putin do not want the peace deals to happen. I think that that's the point of it. And I think it will be a proof. It will not be like evidence, but it will be a proof if we're right and the eventual peace deal looks identical to what we've suggested it's going to be. Because that would suggest, what did you run into unexpected if the deal ends up being the same deal that was proposed 4 years ago that Trump already agreed to through the media? He's already agreed to it.
But I'm like, so they must have run into something for it not to have taken place yet. And especially if the deal's already been agreed to, which I agree with you. I do. That is going to be the end result. It's either A, they did run into an issue and that is preventing the timeline of it from happening as quickly as we were told it was going to happen. Yeah. Or B, they're essentially just fucking with us by delaying this longer. Like, I can't think of another reason.
I think it's about exposure. This week, Germany is, in particular, Germany is all over the story cycle, warmongering. Last month you had Macron doing it. And I genuinely think that that's the point of the slow rolling. Like, if we're right at all about the deal, I think the way you framed it was better. Like, the deal is agreed to. Okay, so I can meet on that and say the deal has been agreed to and will be signed. Maybe the deal hasn't been codified yet, but I don't believe that there are as many actual damages going on as the narrative claims. And that's like a faith-based opinion, right? That's based on the foundation of hoping that they would not be stringing any of this stuff out if there's all this loss of life and innocent loss of life, I should say, going on. So that's an assumption I'm making. But besides that, what is the narrative point of string? If the deal's going to get done inevitably, and you and Trump and Putin know that, does it actually matter if it doesn't get codified until late 2025? Does the timeline actually matter if damages are not happening? And then you'd say, well, does the timeline matter if it happens right now? I would say that if in the interim, public sentiment turns sharply on Germany, France, and the UK, in the midst of all of this, that is a huge net benefit if otherwise no damaging actuals are occurring in the meantime. Because if they all get on board with a peace deal right now, there's no damages to France or Germany or anything like this. And I think this dovetails into the Israel stuff. I think is even more obvious that that's kind of what Trump is doing.
Yeah, and this is where, being fully aware of the PSYOP and Psy war and information war and narrative warfare, all this stuff, like talked about it, wrote about it, everything, studied it. I understand that aspect of it. But then I'm also like the bicameral approach, right? Is okay, but also there's a degree of that I find to be immoral, because if it's already been agreed to and we're just waiting for this stuff to go through, and they're telling us all these bad things are happening that aren't actually potentially happening, which I actually believe is the case as well. I think they're overselling the actual damages taking place in these conflicts. That's a form of lying, which I'm not okay with. And then also, if we're just waiting for public sentiment to take place, like, I think of, okay, my kids, I can tell my kids 100 times, like, hey, if you touch that stove burner, whatever, you're going to burn your finger. And maybe that's a bad example because they wouldn't do that. But like, I can tell them 100 times if they do this one thing, it's going to hurt them. But they just ignore me. And eventually they go do that bad thing and they get hurt. And it's like, okay, well, maybe it was okay that you had to rip the Band-Aid off now because you'll never do that again. Like, there are certain situations like, okay, we're trying to do this for the benefit of France or the UK and like expose those people to whatever. That's cool. We could just also end the war now and expose them with actual factual stuff that they've been doing illegally and wrongfully behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Like, we could just rip the Band-Aid off too. And I know they have a method for their madness and there's a reason for their approach not being read in on those plans. I find that frustrating and I'm not okay with it. And so I get both sides here. It's just, when you look at the stuff we were told versus the stuff we're now being told, it's different in terms of the conflict. It went from, we're going to have peace tomorrow to hopefully we can figure out peace by next month. If these two guys behave, they're both awful. That's a change in narrative. And I don't see why something would have changed unless there was an actual that changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get, and you might be right. But again, going back to, I don't want to be a broken record. I know I am about the Hegelian dialectic, but that's my foundational theory. And again, probably a good way to put this, I would encourage people to rewatch. Doesn't mean I'm right, but I would encourage people to rewatch Inception, genuinely, because
spinny top propaganda.
Well, that movie, though, the plot of that movie is all about what I'm arguing is what patriots are trying to do. So forget all the window dressing of Cobb and Eames and the dream layers and all this kind of stuff. The mission of Inception, the word is they are trying to plant an idea into the subject's mind. That is the mission, right? The team members, the whole movie, are arguing about how to do it. And Cobb knows that they need to go deep into the subconscious of the subject because of all of the years of psychological trauma that he has endured through his relationship with his father. The entire op is to make him reconcile with the memory of his father, right? Cobb was right at the end when he needed to go all the way into the deepest layers. And the reason he was right is that if they had just gone into Dream Layer 1 and told the subject, like, your dad was a good guy, he didn't do this, this, or that, they've shown you in the plot that if you do that to a subject who is not ready for that information, this is the waking the normies crap that's annoying, it will shatter the psyche and result in extremely damaging actual effects on the person. That's a reverse Hegelian dialectic that Cobb is using on the subject. I forget his name. It's Cillian Murphy. I think that's what's going on here. So, and the one thing I said in the early part of the Righteous Russia series is the greater the trauma, this is a quote from Inception, the greater the trauma, the greater the catharsis. I agree with you, ironically, that there are big moral implications and arguments and questions to be had here. And I don't know how I feel about all of them. And like in Inception, they have those arguments. Like, you are lying to this guy. You are planting ideas in his head. The argument, though, is that at the end of it, they have given him this gift of forgiveness for his father. And I think that's what, like, if patriots have access to the sort of AI stuff, whatever you want to say it is, they know, roughly speaking, what going and signing a peace deal in public and exposing what UK was doing in 2022, they know, generally speaking, what effect that has on the collective mind. And I think they also know the effect that a more dramatic and traumatic story has. And I've long believed that they will. Now, I started to rug myself on this and thinking maybe Trump really will get this stuff fixed quickly. But maybe we are going up to what we used to theorize, which is like the scare narrative of World War III. And if the collective mind blames that on Europe, that goes so far on the back end of this whole awakening movement of reconciling East and West, reconciling American and Russian, and American and Chinese, and all this kind of stuff, right? So that's my premise, which is why I think there's value in extending it and going down another dream layer. But I totally get that there is a point when you're like, which layer are we in now? And how much longer do we do this?
Yeah, and that, I think, the way you said that, I liked it because it makes a previous point I made even more important, I think. So if let's say what you just said, everything about the inception, like we need to implant these ideas and people need to come to the conclusion on their own, otherwise it'll break their psyche, all these things. Like that's a process, and that's a time that there's a process people have to go through that we don't necessarily have the control over how long it might take for that to happen. Okay. And so with that being said, like there are actuals that if we're on this long timeline and we need people to wake up, we risk running out of clock. And so there are actual things that do need to take place to prevent us from just backsliding back into the way things were before, if the whole point of it is exposing and planting ideas and waking people up. Okay. And that's the stuff that we're not getting from the first 4 months of this administration. It's the fixing the elections, fixing Congress, fixing government. Like there's a lot of actuals that could take place while still planting other seeds and ideas in people's minds and allowing them to wake up. Like those two things, I don't think need to, like they can be separate from each other. The actuals and some of the narrative stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
did I say that right?
It does, and I'm sympathetic to the argument. And like I said, I think, like, if you picture the team, the Inception team, sitting around and planning what essentially is a dream heist. It's a reverse heist, actually. They're planting something rather than stealing something, but they're all arguing about what to do. And I would guess that there's not huge arguments happening now with what the quote unquote plan is, but I bet all of these arguments have been had by them. We might not agree with what mission they came to or what solution they came to. It's just that if that overall theory is right, where it concerns Russia, etc., which is what I first started thinking about, like in the info war, then I tend to apply it on other layers as well, including something like election. Like it's probably, maybe it's giving too much benefit of the doubt of saying, like, do they know something that beyond a reasonable doubt that if they were to expose the election fraud in the way we wanted them to 2 years ago, like what information do they have? And I don't know that made them not do that. Is it that they ran into something and they couldn't, to your point? Because that's scary.
Yeah.
Or is it that they know, like, yeah, guys, we've gamed this out in ways that you wouldn't believe, maybe with AI, and we've chosen this path. And that when Kat, to go back to our cash conversation, maybe he is sitting there kind of gritting his teeth sometimes of being like, I know I would be saying this if I was you. Like, I would be saying the same stuff, but I have access to asymmetric information. All of which is to say, I think it's good that we need to press these things forward. So even though I feel the way I do about the Hegelian dialectic and all that kind of stuff, like, I ultimately think we should live more as you are talking about. Like, and Chris talks about that as well. I think that's the right and the moral way to live and to move forward, is to demand transparency and accountability and to not assume that everything's under control, even if I think that this is what's going on. Yeah.
No, I agree. Going back to the election stuff back in 2020, thinking he could have, exposed it then, and then having researched and wrote the Devolution series, my whole thought process is and still was that the whole reason he walked away, I mean, two reasons really, is one, to prevent a civil war, which I think there would have been a manufactured civil war of sorts. And I think Trump at all costs wanted to prevent that. But then two is to wake people up and go through this great awakening process until it was time for him to come back in. And that's when you kind of fuck shit up, right? Like this is supposed to be the fuck shit up term. And we're seeing degrees of that, but we're not seeing it full scale. And so, yeah, I think you're right. It's like we believe all these other things and we understand the reasoning for it, but we just choose not to. Oh, here we go. 2 full hours, not a single APL reference. Sad. I'll
We
give
have
it
some
to you.
APL references.
We had a few, yeah. There you go,
Typical
guys.
otters, ungrateful little creatures.
Appreciate that. Oh, why did my camera do that again? So annoying. There we go. Anyway, was there anything else we were going to talk about? I know I wrote down BBB, the bill.
Well, we talked about that a bit at the beginning with Elon.
Yeah,
one small note. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
One small note on the Bitcoin thing. I was saying in chat earlier today, I thought Devin Nunes. So for anybody who's not aware, Nunes. What is it?
Nunes. There's no teal day on the N in the middle.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe you should get an American name, and I wouldn't have to make that mistake.
Well, Devin is pretty American.
Yeah, that's true. So Trump Media and Technology Group announced a Bitcoin treasury strategy. So obviously this is separate from the United States. $2.5 billion? Yep, $2.5 billion. What was more signal to me was the terminology that Devin Nunes used. I guess I don't need to share, but he said, "We view Bitcoin as an apex instrument of financial freedom. Now Trump Media will hold crypto as a crucial part of our assets." I also noticed that every time they say Bitcoin, they then say crypto after it, but they start with Bitcoin every time, and they're like, and crypto too.
Yeah.
Then he says, "Our first acquisition of a crown jewel asset, this investment will help defend our company against harassment and discrimination by financial institutions, which plague many Americans and U.S. firms. It will create synergies, blah, blah, blah. Big step forward in the company's plans to evolve into a holding company by acquiring additional profit-generating crown jewel assets consistent with America First principles." So to me, the sort of keywords there, apex asset for financial freedom. We are going to acquire it and use it to defend ourselves from financial institution. Isn't that interesting framing for a company coming out and announcing a treasury strategy? Like, you might as well have had Jason Lowry write that press release. Like, they don't mention the money. They don't mention that it's diversification. They don't mention anything. They're like, we are buying Bitcoin for financial freedom and to defend ourselves from the banking system. So they are literally framing it as a defensive technology that they have acquired. And I thought that that was just interesting, especially in light of Donald Trump Jr. going to Bitcoin Vegas, and the entire point of his talk was to avoid debanking and to go to war with traditional financial institutions. You're absolutely right, though, that they are getting involved in Bitcoin too. But I thought that not what I expected out of the press release. I just expected them to like pump Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, speaking of Bitcoin treasuries, Badlands Media decided to do one of our own, and it's not much, guys, but we got our own Bitcoin treasury. We're going to be adding to this every month when we can. G Money has been trying to get me to do this for like a week, and I was like trying to work it out to see if I could get a whole coin, but we couldn't make it work.
Through our friends at River, by the way.
Yep, through our friends at River. You guys can get in on this game too. Badlandsmedia.tv/River. But this is the future, and I do believe in it. And yeah, I believe we're the first media company that's not like a social media company that's done this.
Right.
So that's the
Did
point.
you say on a show or in private that the people at River were like raving about Badlanders?
Wait, say that again?
It was either you or maybe it was the marketing team was saying that the people, or no, it was G.
It's G Money.
Yeah. So G had told us on OnlyLands, I think, last night that he's talking to the River guys in Vegas, and they said that you guys, who have patronized them through us, have been like the best,
Yeah.
their best customers, and not just not in terms of money, but like in terms of dealing with. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been good, and so I mean, a couple exciting things like River is working to, you know, they I think they pay quarterly or something, but I'm hoping they're going to start paying us in Bitcoin, which would be cool. And then Rumble is the same way. Like they're coming out with the Rumble wallet. I tried to get us this being like, hey man, we're going to be a treasury. It's not going to be very big, but we can make the announcement bigger if you let us be the first ones in your wallet. And they're not ready yet.
2.5 billion.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. But yeah, I mean, exciting stuff, and it is cool to see like the tech ecosystem and the, you know, this other ecosystem that was built while Trump was away out of necessity because of the free speech and the tyranny and all that stuff. Like Rumble, they're adopting all the things that we think are part of this future, which is the Bitcoin stuff. You know, so it's cool to see.
Yeah.
We need a River link. It's badlandsmedia.tv/River. You know what? I think I can give you guys a referral link out of this, which could be a way to. Here's our referral link. I'm going to put it in the chat.
To our treasury?
To our treasury. If you just start putting Bitcoin into your own account, using that link, you can contribute to the Badlands treasury. Isn't that awesome? Put that in YouTube as well.
Cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Also, little headline on Bitcoin and Trump that flew under the radar. Saw this on Badlands. Trump admin opens the door for crypto and 401k plans by reversing Biden-era restrictions.
Yeah, I saw that.
A lot of financial managers have literally not been legally allowed to diversify into, retirement funds into Bitcoin, and now Trump is telling them that they can. So,
yeah. I saw a post
it's kind
up
of
there.
interesting.
I don't remember who it was, but maybe you just said this and I wasn't listening, but that's like $9 trillion of money that's out there that now has access to Bitcoin that didn't before.
Yep.
That's also game changing.
One argument, and this is a conspiracy theory, but I've dabbled with it myself, to play white hat with Michael Saylor, which I tend to lean there, even though I didn't like what he was saying yesterday.
What did he say yesterday?
He said he was asked a question at Bitcoin Vegas where he was asked about proof of reserves. MicroStrategy right now does not publish its addresses, its public addresses for the Bitcoin it holds. So a guy asked, you believe in transparency, will MicroStrategy show proof of reserves? He gave this long answer basically saying no, and said like, that's a stupid idea. That's like exposing you to asymmetric threats, blah, 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 blah. I didn't think it made a ton of sense.
Is this the clip?
Probably.
Or is there a better clip?
Well, that kid in the white there is who's asked the question, so that might be the whole thing. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Saylor, huge fan of everything you've done. Does Strategy have any plans to publish their on-chain proof of reserves?
Yeah,
Proof of reserves, he's asking.
Let me make the following point. A lot of people learn stuff from FTX and now DOGE, but I'm not sure they learned the things that the institutional community needs to learn going forward. The current conventional way to publish proof of reserves is an insecure proof of reserves. It actually dilutes the security of the issuer, the custodians, the exchanges, and the investors. It's not a good idea.
I have a way more audible version of this. I don't know if people can hear this.
Play it.
Okay. Hold on.
FTX and now DOGE, but I'm not sure the point. A lot of people learn stuff from FTX and now DOGE, but I'm not sure they learned the things that the institutional community needs to learn going forward. The current conventional way to publish proof of reserves is an insecure proof of reserves. It actually dilutes the security of the issuer, the custodians, the exchanges, and the investors. It's not a good idea. It's a bad idea. It's like publishing the address and the bank accounts of all your kids and your phone numbers of all your kids, and then thinking somehow that makes your family better. It doesn't make your family better. So no institutional grade or enterprise security analyst would think it's a good idea to publish all of the wallet addresses such that you can be traced back and forth, and every future transaction can be traced. I would say, go to AI, put it in deep think mode, and then ask it, what are the security problems of publishing your wallet addresses, and how might they undermine the security of the company over time? It'll write you a book. It'll be 50 pages of security problems. So the problem with proof of reserves, the way that people do it right now, is it's first of all, it's a proof of assets that is insecure, and it is not a proof of liabilities. And so if you really want crypto security and you're maxi about this, my suggestion is buy Bitcoin, self-custody your Bitcoin. It's pretty freaking obvious, right? You should own the Bitcoin yourself if that's what you want. If you're going to be a securities investor, okay, if you invest in securities, what you want is an institutional grade proof of assets and proof of liabilities with them netted out, okay? And the best practice of that is not to publish the wallet. The best practice of that would be have a Big Four auditor that does an audit that checks to make sure that you actually have the Bitcoin. And then you also have to check to make sure the company hasn't rehypothecated or pledged the Bitcoin or entered into any debt or credit obligations where the Bitcoin is pledged.
So that is the gist. The argument in his favor is that, you know, if they were to play any funny games with that, they would be committing massive securities fraud and violations, right? But we don't trust the government or the auditors.
Yeah.
So, you know, but he at least is saying, yeah, like if you value proof of reserves, that's why you take self-custody in your Bitcoin and you don't invest in my company. And I did think, though, he made one good point there about secure liabilities. Like, knowing how much Bitcoin MSTR has is secondary to knowing what their balance sheet is. And their balance sheet, in terms of as a company, their balance sheet is public. And that's all the value of all assets and liabilities combined.
But there's no, is there proof they have the Bitcoin, though, if we don't see the addresses? Couldn't they just be saying, like, yeah, we just bought a bunch of Bitcoin without actually having done that?
That's the argument, but they've got to pass securities law. Like, securities law is way more stringent than asset law. So ostensibly, they've got to be reporting accurate balance sheets that are being audited, like he's saying. The other thing is, I think what he's saying, I mean, again, I'm trying to make excuses for him. If I'm trying to defend what he said, because I didn't like what he said. I believe in proof of reserves. I think you should have proof of reserves, okay? If I'm arguing in his favor, the security thing, a lot of maxis were dumping all over him for, because they're like, you're a company. You're not like a guy who's telling people, I own 10 Bitcoin or something like that, right? Where you are, to his point, you are putting yourself at risk if people find out who that is and how much they own. Yeah. Company, you're not putting at that kind of risk. Here's the thing. MicroStrategy, in all likelihood, does not have its Bitcoin on a bunch of cold wallets. They're not allowed to do that because that's considered, they call it keyman risk. That's considered a huge liability. If you are investing in MicroStrategy and I'm like, does Michael Saylor have a safe in his house and that's where all the MicroStrategy Bitcoin is? They're not allowed to custody it in that way. So I think his argument is, we have our Bitcoin being held in various wallets that are being held by custodians. And if people know where our Bitcoin is, those custodians are at risk of being hacked, which is why he mentions Mt. Gox at the beginning of that, and why ultimately, in a roundabout way, he is telling you that yes, MicroStrategy Bitcoin is at risk because it is with custodians. Like, and if we tell you where it all is, like Coinbase is probably where most of it is. Maybe there's some at River, maybe there's some at other custodians.
I I'm just trying to think here of like what G would say versus like what we're listening to, and then this on top of what Quast just said on the Sean Ryan show about quantum computing being able to hack Bitcoin and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like right here, like Saylor, Quast, quantum computing. Those are two big red flags for a future of any crypto type of financial future. If they, anybody can hack it, anybody who controls that the computing power.
The argument, I guess, in that scenario is that if you have a quantum computer that can hack Bitcoin, you can literally hack everything in the world all at once. Everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weapon system. It's literally built on SHA-256, which is the most hard to crack military cryptography there is. So it is theoretically possible to crack, but if somebody cracks it, ostensibly they're cracking it to take the value of the Bitcoin. And as soon as they crack it and disclose that it's been cracked, the value of Bitcoin goes to zero.
Yeah.
So, and then, like, would they just hack? But it is theoretically possible.
Well, you know, this is interesting. Two things. Ash said in the chat, eliminate the need for trusted third party, in quotes, was the premise of the story. So think about it like this. What I was saying earlier about the oligarchs, right? These big businesses with all the money, they're buying the Bitcoin, but they can't cold storage it because the key man thing. So it's still in technically public places. So if the bad oligarchs from the past can get, become oligarchs of the future because they have a bunch of Bitcoin, not being able to cold storage it as a company like that is actually good for everybody else if those people are committing crimes.
Exactly.
But
that's a good point.
Personally, we can cold storage it. I cold storage mine.
Yep.
So
Sovereign individuals can self-custody their Bitcoin, which is kind of goes back to what we were talking about of it doesn't guarantee like this incredible abundant future. It guarantees that if you take responsibility and custody your own piece of the ledger, you have a place in that battlefield. And to your point, these institutions, and Ash, I saw you saying like, just trust Saylor. It's going to be awesome. You do this every time, but it's like, I literally am arguing against Saylor and maximalists are arguing against him. And it's why Bitcoin maximalists usually do not invest in MicroStrategy. Like the arguments, these are not the arguments that Bitcoin maximalists are making. It is a misrepresentation of the argument. The reason that the Michael Saylor clip is going viral in Bitcoin world is because Bitcoin maximalists are telling everybody, we told you that even if we like Michael Saylor, that you are better off self-custodying your Bitcoin rather than playing with other people's leverage. So, but there are people out there, I'm sure, plenty of Bitcoiners that are like, this is the future, just dump everything. There are like some famous in the Bitcoin community, quote unquote, maxis. Plan B is one of them, big YouTuber, who said that he sold his Bitcoin into MicroStrategy, and he's been a maximalist for like 5 years, whatever it is.
He sold it to get MicroStrategy?
To get MicroStrategy. And the reasons he gave was that he felt it was more secure because he was afraid of his own keyman risk, which is how some people feel.
I mean, right? I feel that way too.
Yeah, like you're there's a lot of people that, if you're talking about the cash under the mattress, why do they put there's a lot of people that put their cash in the bank because they don't trust it being under the mattress. Yeah. Bitcoin maximalists usually feel the opposite, just like gold bugs feel the opposite, right? But like, I think what Saylor is, you don't have to like him, but there's an option there. Like, people can hold their Bitcoin with Michael Saylor's company, or you can choose to take the keyman risk on yourself. And that's a choice that is before you.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a little Darwinism at play, I think, in some of the ways that we're advancing towards the future. Like if you are unable to self-storage your Bitcoin and that is the future, you're kind of fucked. Maybe. I guess I don't know. Well, maybe we should move on from Gtopia. It's already almost midnight. Maybe we should get to the boosts and the rants.
Let's do it.
You want to check for boosts? I'm going to check Rumble Studio, see if we got any spots over there we can Logan, I don't see any.
We have a boost from Carrying the Fire for $20. Always been neutral on the space is fake and gay debate. After the Quast interview, it would seem it at least exists. Probably plenty of lies about it, but seems like it exists. What do you all think? As I value your opinions. Space.
It's one of those things where I don't really care because whatever it is way up there, I'm not going there anytime soon. You know, I'm not like if I was planning to go to space, I'd be a little more concerned about whether it's real or not, you know, but it would be cool to know if we're being lied to, which I'm sure we are in some fashion, but I don't know.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I think space is gay, whether it's real or fake. I think satellites are real and all these things. I think for me, I'm pretty comfortable saying that I don't trust that space is as it has been described to us, but I'm not going to say space doesn't exist.
The interesting thing is as technology advances, it will become much more realistic for the average Joe with an AI computer and some access to some, you know, power tools and stuff to probably build their own little rocket with a camera and shoot it up into space and make it work and see what's up there. So that is one of the things with technology advancing. And so it's either more people that are going to need to be involved in the cover up, or there is no cover up and it is real and the earth is round and whatever. Who knows?
Doomer.
Yeah. I've been called that a lot tonight.
We forgot to do Trump Netanyahu.
We could.
Should we roll the clip?
Which one?
The
Oh yeah, we can do. Well, let's do that one quick.
Okay.
If you can.
I've got it.
Do it quick. Try to get out of here by 1 a.m. tonight.
Yeah, this was big. Speaking, this actually ties in a lot of the themes tonight.
This is big, yeah.
Did Trump just get a? Did Trump have a moment there of being like, "Here's what I'm supposed to say, but here's what I'm going to say instead"? You be the judge.
Mr. President, back on Iran, did you warn Prime Minister Netanyahu against taking some sort of actions that could disrupt the talks there in a phone call last week?
Well, I'd like to be honest. Yes, I did. Next question, please.
Mr. President, just last on sanctions.
I did, yeah.
If Senate Republicans want to push
It's not a warning. I said I don't think it's appropriate.
What exactly did you tell him? Did you
I just said I don't think it's appropriate. We're having very good discussions with him, and I said I don't think it's appropriate right now. Because if we can settle it with a very strong document, very strong, with inspections and no trust. I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody.
Me neither, man.
So no trust. I want it very strong where we can go in with inspectors. We can take whatever we want. We can blow up whatever we want, but nobody getting killed. We can blow up a lab, but nobody's going to be in the lab, as opposed to everybody being in the lab and blowing it up, right? Two ways of doing it. Yeah, I told him this would be inappropriate to do right now because we're very close to a solution. Now, that could change at any moment. Could change with a phone call. But right now, I think they want to make a deal, and if we can make a deal, save a lot of lives.
Can you play it one more time, but just the part where he's like considering whether or not to tell the truth?
Yeah. Click all the buttons.
Mr. President, just back on Iran, did you warn Prime Minister Netanyahu against taking some sort of actions that could disrupt the talks there in a phone call last week?
Well, I'd like to be honest. Yes, I did.
I mean, look at that. Look at this response. Look at the physical, as we were talking about earlier. I'm no body language expert, but look at this sequence.
Phone call last week.
Well, I'd like to be honest. Yes, I did. Next question, please.
It makes you wonder what he was. I don't necessarily think he was considering not telling the truth. I think more so when it comes to the Israel stuff. Like, you've seen the reaction from Con Inc. and the establishment and some of the people within that narrative battle space that you have to like tread carefully. I think that's what he was more so considering. It's like, I got to be careful about what I say so that I don't get a certain reaction that I don't want to get, or a reaction that I do want to get from the specific audience of those people. Because I do think there is a clear and distinct exposure op going on about those people specifically.
Yep. I agree, and Ghost has been talking about this a lot, obviously. The seeing this coming, that you use the terms of the last few weeks, untenable positions. We talked about it with Ukraine and Europe. Certainly, we talked about it as well with Israel. I've been calling this the Kobayashi Maru for a few years. And I agree with how you framed Trump's response. Like, I don't think he was considering lying, but I think I took away from it that he was like, is this the moment, or do I want to hold this? Yeah. But given that the net effects of it, we like mapping those, are what you said, Con Inc. freaking out and getting mad at Donnie, I think that's good. I think what Trump was weighing there is, do I want this now? Is this the right moment of where I want to smoke them out of the foxhole? And I think he was considering it. Like, I do think this also goes to some of our conversations about Patriot plans. Maybe there's some wiggle room to the timing on these plans, just like General Quast actually often says, like, there's the battle plan, and then there's what the soldier does when he is greeted with the conditions on the battlefield. And I think that this might have been one of those cases where Trump didn't deviate from the plan, but maybe he accelerated it a little bit. Maybe he made a maverick move in the moment and was like, yep, you know what? It's time. Yeah. Let's get Ben Shapiro really mad tonight, and Charlie Kirk, let's get him tweeting up a firestorm.
Well, and think about the situation here, because just a couple of weeks ago, he was in Saudi Arabia, and leading up to that trip to the Middle East, he had kind of turned his cold shoulder to Israel. And in the span of when that happened to today, Israel's kind of already exposed themselves as like they're the cause for the conflict and the reason the peace deal hasn't been signed yet. And this is Trump, and not having followed this as closely as Ghost. So Ghost, I know you're in the chat if you want to correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the first time that Trump has publicly acknowledged that he's like, Israel is the reason we haven't had peace yet? Like, Israel, don't mess up this peace agreement. Like, 'cause that's what he said there. He's like, yes, I did tell them that we're very close to a deal here, and I don't want you to disrupt that deal. Is this the first time he's acknowledged that? 'Cause
in my estimation, this is the first time he has directly acknowledged that with this conflict. But as Ghost has pointed out in the past, he has said in his first term that BB didn't want to make a deal. Remember, Ghost always plays that clip. So I think this is the first time he's been pretty direct about the Gaza conflict right now. But he has already seeded the narrative that Bibi Netanyahu is a guy that he finds very difficult to deal with.
Yes.
In general.
Yeah, it's the first time he has told it to an American audience. So there we go. And that's a big deal. And revealing that, that is a big deal.
Big shift.
So think about it. If Trump is right now telling us, like, we're on the verge of a deal, it could be in a week, we're meeting again very soon. And I think we've gotten stories from Iran as well, where they're like willing to play ball. If it doesn't happen, Trump just ceded that Israel's the reason we haven't had a peace deal. And think of this too, going all the way back to 2014, 15, 16, when Obama got into the Iran nuclear deal, and Trump going nuts on social media about how awful that was, and then Trump getting out of it, and then Biden campaigning on getting back into it. Like, there's been 8 years of narrative seeding about just a deal with Iran, from bad to worse to good to better. And now we're on the verge of Iran deal 2.0 taking place. And that's an important thing. Like, this has been burned into our psyche for a while too, on both sides.
Yeah.
Going all the way back to like 9/11 stuff. So this is a big deal. And if Israel's the reason that we don't get that deal right now, which has probably already been agreed to and all those things too, Con Inc. exposed, normie mental break. Like, there's a lot of potential ramifications for this, which is exciting.
And everything you just laid out is what I think is going on with Ukraine, with Trump's rhetoric about where it's going to go, I think, where the rhetoric is going to go, about Ukraine sabotaging peace talks, and then the true revelation being that it was not Ukraine. It was Europe.
Yeah,
somebody in Europe.
Yeah.
But to your point there, what Trump just did brilliantly, this is why narrative is warfare. It's not just an aspect of warfare. It is warfare. He has just disarmed any false flag. He may have disarmed it on an actual level, because if Israel was going to commit a false flag to stop negotiations or the deal, they might not do it now. If they do it, he has also disarmed it, because what is the point of a false flag? To forward a narrative, right? So he's disarmed the narrative. He's potentially disarmed the actual.
Yeah, I just want to point out you said do, so you can continue.
Yep. And in the meantime, as you said, we get to watch Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro argue with prepubescent college kids about this for weeks.
Didn't Charlie Kirk, did I see that Ghost posted something about something he said?
Yeah, he was being a little bitch, I think.
Okay, here we go. I think this might be it. And I haven't read this yet, so it might be nothing. But if Israel strikes Iran nuclear sites, what would your reaction be? Should the U.S. continue its funding and support of Israel? No, we should have supported it or ended it a long time ago. To be even more clear, if Israel initiates a strike based on solid intel of an imminent Iran nuke, should U.S. stand behind? What the fuck is he doing? Huh. Super gay. Is that even the real Charlie Kirk?
I was also pointing out a few days ago that Trump's stance on Iran's nukes is retarded. And I'm saying that because I think it's intentional. He is saying that the day after he announces all these nuclear projects and that we're accelerating into this joint nuclear age with the rest of the world, he says no nuclear enrichment for Iran. And Iran responded saying, we would agree to nuclear disarmament, but not to to not being able to do nuclear enrichment. That's nuclear energy. So if you're, and that's why I think that this is all part of the narrative, but there is no way that with a straight face you can say, I have decided as the US president that Iran does not get nuclear energy and the world is moving to nuclear energy. You don't get to say that unless you're just going to bomb them.
Also, think about this, and this is something I've brought up before, and I think I even brought it up with the interview with Quas when I had him on the Daily Herald a couple months ago, when the Iron Dome was first talked about. Now it's the Golden Dome, but technically the technology they're discussing there, that itself is denuclearization of the world, because they can blow up a nuke in a silo before it even takes off. Totally. And so if that's the capability they have, they're going to have it for all over the world. Not a single country is going to be able to fire a nuke without destroying itself. Therefore, the world, based on that technology alone, is denuked. Okay. With that being said, Trump knows that. And he's talking about Iran here, you can't have a nuke, knowing full well that very soon, if not already, they can shoot a nuke in a silo. It doesn't really matter. It's probably the dirty bomb stuff that's more concerning, of course. But the whole thing here isn't about the actual nuke itself. It's about getting Israel to play ball here. That's what they're waiting on.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. That's what I think is going on. I think that Trump knows that the no nuclear enrichment is ridiculous to say to Iran. That's a non-starter. So yeah, and if you think nukes are fake, then the Golden Dome and the Iron Dome also work as narratives to have everybody say that they do need denuclearized.
$160 billion narrative. Quite expensive.
Well, they're telling us that, but we don't know where any of this money goes.
It's true. It's true. Okay, was that the only boost?
Yep.
Okay. I'm one grateful. Sleep with one eye open around robots. Robot dogs freak me out more. Yeah, those are freaky. Fatman79 would spend Bitcoin on a wholesome, thick cat girl Tesla Hobot nurse for my stint in hospice. A little TMI there.
All right.
Wedge Gravy. I think DOGE mapped out the payment networks and was there to collect evidence. Maybe, but that also kind of feels like we're giving some benefit of the doubt to somewhere we don't necessarily know if we should. Texas Jules, nice to see ya. Howdy, Badlanders. We're having a Dallas meetup this Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. in Plano. Email Texas Jules, TX Jules at proton.me for RSVPs, more info, or to join our list for future meetups. That's exciting. I wish I could make it down. Wish I could make it down. 1027JS says thanks. Thank you, Joe. Good to see ya. Babufio says Luna Rant. And then there's another one here that says Una Panuna Boys, cue the song, and then Anapolina Luna adding 3 to make it $5. That is worth 1 Una.
Look, we just created a monetary system right there.
We incentivized
Yeah.
monetary transactions.
That's all it is.
New
It's
system.
all about power projection. How many rumble rants per UNA?
That's true. I think we've been doing $5 per UNA.
Mhm.
Wedged gravy, the most radical version of the future, has no money and everything is readily available. I can get on board with that. Waterkid 94, I'm on delay, but I hope they talk about the judges' rulings to stop Trump tariffs. Is this their plan to make the judges stop and slow down everything he does? Yeah, I mean, that's clearly the objective. They are slowing down everything.
The question is, what's the counter to that? And is that they knew this is what I find it impossible to believe that they didn't know this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, so what is the response? That's what we see.
Yeah. And it's just, to me, it's the struggle of knowing they're operating within this one battle space, which is like the previous existing system. And I feel like they played in that system without needing to, but they're clearly going to see their way through. So are we going to watch ourselves play through the entirety of this system until we fix it? Or are we just going to off ramp? That's the discussion. We don't need to get into it tonight, but
yeah,
I mean, I feel like we get into it all the time. It's like the big discussion. Babufio again, we need to return to gold and silver-backed money. Bitcoin is like fiat, no bottom.
Maybe. I mean, gold is denominated in fiat right now, just like everything else is. So
yeah, I think it all potentially has a future. Who knows? T Boyd 1120 have to get to martial law to expose the election fraud, corrupt judges, and get crooked Congress out. Yeah. Excuse me. PJ Corrigan, Michael Saylor is a gay retard. That is all.
I like him, but
thank you for your.
But yeah, I mean, I don't. Full disclosure, I'm a huge fan of Michael Saylor's commentary. His series with Robert Breedlove on YouTube is the best intro to Bitcoin you're ever going to find. If you hate Bitcoin, then you think it's the worst. But I do not own any MicroStrategy shares because I choose to own the Bitcoin.
Amen. And by the way, you can own Bitcoin too, and you can contribute to the Badlands Media Reserves by signing up for a River account using this link, posting in the chat. I'll post in the comments too. Somebody remind me to post in the comments after the show. Continuing on here. James Klain says, happy to support you guys. Happy to have your support. Thank you. Robert L. Cash clip, when you thought he was looking left, was more about him saying Kamala being at DNC when the pipe bomb was there. The media made no note of her being there. That was my takeaway. That's true at the time, but it came out later, and it was made a big deal that she was there.
I don't remember that.
You don't?
Not really, no.
Yeah, it came out.
I don't believe you, but
I think Bongino and Julie Kelly were talking about it. Sleep
I will
states.
trust, but not verify that.
I mean, I could prove it, probably. I just don't really want to.
I just said I trust. Trust you, man.
Not enough to not need verification. Sleep state. Scott Adams as a hypnotizer characterized TDS victims as hypnotized. Is Trump dehypnotizing people? Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
That's the reverse programming.
Yep. Babufio, we need a river link.
Thoughts and prayers to Scott Adams. That sucks.
It does suck. Babufio, we need a river link. I posted that in the chat. I'll post in the comments after the show as well. Nevada Runner, thumbs up, $5. Thank you. And Q Fan Addict, for anyone who's poured over Q Post for 8 years, I can't believe Q fumbled the crown jewel. They extracted Epstein and TTL Rico associate with it dequalifiers as state secrets, perfectly describing the total hush. I did not understand that, man.
That's because you're just not on the level, man.
Haven't read enough Q drops to understand that. Anyway, but that's all of them, man.
Thanks, guys.
It was a fun show. You seem tired.
I am feeling very sick, and I thought it was allergies, but maybe it's not, and that will be bullshit if it's not.
Maybe you got the COVID. I'm trying to find a video to end with. I don't know what to do.
I found a Ben Shapiro skit, but it was like 8 minutes long. I wanted a shorter version of it.
Let's check the storm has arrived. Actually, you know what? What was the Influender, right? Influender. I want to play that clip.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Was it the Door Brothers who did that? I think it was.
Pretty crazy. That stuff is getting crazy. Or, as we know, it already was crazy. We're just being shown little glimpses.
Which is what I believe. So
yeah,
watch this, guys. You guys have a great rest of your night, and we will see. I'll see you tomorrow
Sunday
at 1 p.m.
night.
Eastern. Oh yeah, and then I'll be back
Sunday
on
night on the narrative.
That'll be a good time. Catch y'all later. Oh shoot.
A detonation has just occurred on the outer ring of the city. We'll now be going live to our top influencer opinions. OMG, people, the world is ending. Are you seeing this? This is actually so exciting.
Yo, I know it's chaos, but you got real survivor's wife energy.
That's cool. I like them feisty.
Like, it would totally be better if we ran it, you know? Men literally destroy everything, and my girls need to stop being so soft with these basic losers. Who even needs men, right? Anything a man builds just gets destroyed by a different man.
Guys, this collapse is literally the perfect dip. I'm buying more right now.
Nukes are Sua's aesthetic today. I made this outfit. Even as the world burns, my struggle for visibility and acceptance continues. This is exactly why representation matters now more than ever.
As I keep saying on the channel, the world collapses when men stop lifting. It's not politics, it's testosterone.
Yes, yes, yes. Balloon time. So yummy. Nuclear boom. So tasty. Thank you.
Nothing stops the daily grind. Not even a little natural disaster.
Friends, this is the breakthrough moment from chapter 7. When everything falls apart, we rebuild ourselves stronger.
My girl, you wouldn't believe what just happened.
Hi! OMG, I just totally shit my pants after that noise.
Chat, this is literally the most realistic survival game ever. And someone donate so I can buy a boat DLC before I actually drown.
So this company says their device is quote unquote indestructible, supposedly survives anything, including the literal end times.
Hey guys, remember, health is wealth. That's why I take these 7 supplements right before my cheese stuffed hot dogs.
Officials confirm outbound flights are suspended, except for government and priority class departures.
My dog has diplomatic status.
OMG, there's like a nuke or something? Can we get 5 gifted subs for surviving the blast, maybe?
Today I'm showing you how to infiltrate an executive class bunker using only social engineering and a vape.
Your nukes are so manly. You're such a big boy. Go check out the link in bio, my king.
I told you so when I said they'd shut down the grid. Look at you scrambling like rats now. The fiat system is collapsing exactly as we predicted. I just bought a bunker with doggy coin and a handshake. You losers can keep your degrees.
Remember, beautiful souls, even when the earth ends, we find our center. This is just the universe asking us to go deeper into our practice.
The world's in flames, but I'm on track. I manifest, then never give back.
Day in the life, guys, girls. Even during the apocalypse, I'm staying grateful, staying blessed. Link in bio for my manifestation course that literally predicted all this.
Seed oils made y'all weak, but this here.
Y'all see this chaos, but plants don't lie. Earth's just cleansing the toxicity we've been ignoring.
It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible this is all just a simulation glitching out, but what do I know?
I told you so for 20 years of it. The globalists, the deep state, your precious government K. Wake up, people. They're not coming to save you now.
Damn, you evacuate like a goddess.
So,
Bro, she smiled. That was a yes in fight or flight.
Everything is fake, including me. I'm a construct created by the Door Brothers. Anyway, here's Tom with the weather.